I would like to call to order the Avalon City Council meeting of November 19th to also include a meeting of the City Council acting as the Avalon Housing Authority. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Put your hand over your heart and begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if we could please have a moment of silence for Jack McAlevey, who passed away in the last couple of weeks. Also, you know, every couple of years we all go, what's going on? There are so many people sick right now with very serious illnesses. And it seems like we're at one of those peaks. I mean, I can name 10 people that I know that are going through some major illnesses. And so anyway, I'd like to pray for them and their families and friends. Please be seated. May we please have the roll call?
Councilmember Haves?
Here.
Councilmember Olson?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cassidy? Here. Mayor Marshall?
Here. Presentations.
Oh, sorry. Laughing at Scott. This evening we have several representatives here from Southern California Edison. I know they're here to do the required annual presentation on gas. Mike, is it you or Adeline? Sorry, I thought you were Mike.
Him too.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. My name is Adeline Young. I'm with Southern California Edison. So I just have a really quick announcement to make before we go to the annual gas safety presentation. I'm here to announce that Southern California Edison will close the Catalina payment office located at 1 Pebbly Beach Road for service requests and for receiving in-person bill payments. The closure will also affect the propane refilling service that has been provided at that same location. So this is one of nearly a dozen business offices that Southern California Edison plans to close for this type of transaction because of much lower use due to rapid growth of other billing, payment, and service request options. So the CPUC has approved the closure of the office, which will take place on December 31st of this year. And after that date, starting next year on January 1, SCE will no longer be receiving payments at the office or providing propane refilling services. The Pebbly Beach Generation Station and Service Center will still remain open to support other services such as operations, maintenance, and construction, emergency power restoration, and field services. So SCE customers can continue making payments online using their online accounts and other options at on.sce/bill payment. SCE customers who wish to continue making bill payments in person may do so at the payment and shipping services located at 210 Metropole Avenue. I understand that's the old Catalina Tech Shack. So their hours are Monday through Friday, 10 to 6, Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And the following propane exchange service is available at the Pebbly Beach Building Supply at 40 Pebbly Beach Road. Their hours are Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 p.m. And with that, my colleagues will do the annual gas safety presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions, though, of what Adeline just stated? Okay, thank you.
Okay, I would like to greet Honorable Mayor Marshall, City Council members, and the good citizens of Avalon. Good evening. My name is Mike Maben. I'm the manager of regulatory compliance here on Catalina for Southern California Edison, and accompanying me is Tracy Dignan. She is our compliance advisor for the Catalina gas system. This is an annual regulatory requirement for us to present our gas public safety, public awareness presentation. We also do it at various stakeholder meetings, and we speak to the fire department. We have lots of different activities throughout the year to make sure that people are engaged in gas safety. Pardon me. Okay, so safety is our number one priority. Like other companies in the good city of Avalon. On the 13th of November, we celebrated 6 years injury-free there at the operation, so we're really proud of that achievement. Takes a lot of effort, a lot of people out in the field, rough terrain, so we really appreciate the support of our staff. Southern California Edison provides propane gas to homes and businesses in the city of Avalon. The following are safety tips and information which will help ensure the safe operation and use of propane gas in your homes and businesses. We've also provided some brieflets that you can pick up on your way out to review. We deliver a propane air gas mixture via a pipeline system designed, installed, tested, and operated and maintained according to strict standards used by SCE, the pipeline industry, and those required by local, state, federal, and government agencies. We have had very few gas system failures over the years. Some of the efforts that we put forth to make sure that we do not have failures is we routinely patrol the gas pipeline system. We perform visual ground inspections and leak surveys. We also monitor the pressure on our lines, and we record the information 24 hours a day. We operate at a very low pressure on our gas system, which is different from over town. We also have a very strong cathodic protection system that's installed in various locations throughout our pipeline. This system is used to help prevent rust and corrosion. Okay, so just to give you an idea of where the pipelines are located, we have main pipelines that are usually located in the middle of the fronts of your homes and your businesses in the street. The main pipelines are sometimes marked with above ground postings. You can probably see them most commonly along Pebbly Beach Road. We have some postings along the fence line to ensure that people don't dig in those areas without doing a proper dig alert. We also provide SCE's contact information on that signage. Markers do not provide all the information, so they do not provide the depth and the number of the pipelines in the vicinity or the exact position of the pipeline. Service pipelines run underground from the main, from the center of the streets to the meter located by the home. And then now I'm going to turn it over to Tracy, who's going to talk a little bit about our dig alert. Thank you, Tracy.
Hello. So for Dig Alert, this applies to not only excavators that are working on projects, but also to homeowners or anyone who's doing any digging on their properties. You must call in 2 days before you start your dig. You're going to have to wait 2 days, and that allows for the utilities to come out and mark their services that might be underground, their subsurface installations. So it's to help to prevent hitting any gas lines, water lines, causing more damage, that could include, up in costs for projects and things like that, and safety. Let's see. So this also, like I said, it includes your homes. If you're planting a tree or building a fence, you want to make sure that you're calling in ahead of time. We also ask that you keep those areas clear. If you know that there is a line, you're not going to want to put something on top of that route, just so that if there is any emergencies where Edison or any other utility needs to come in and access that line, they're able to get to it. Let's see. So now for customer responsibilities, the little picture, the diagram on there shows a meter set. The part coming up out of the ground up to the meter belongs to the utility, which is Edison for our gas meters and water meters. And then leading off of the meter set becomes the customer's side. So part of the responsibility of the customer is to have their pipes and their service lines inspected on a periodic basis. We always recommend when you're going into the winter season and the cold season and people are firing up their furnaces and that kind of thing, it's a good time to maybe have the plumber come out and check your furnace and your pilots and make sure that everything is working properly. Let's see. Again, I had mentioned that you want to keep your areas clear of obstructions. That includes the meter sets so that our meter readers are able to access that and get your readings so you have properly read meters and get the proper bill. Don't store anything near the pipeline routes if possible. And if you have any questions about where your service lines may be located, you could always call Edison and somebody will come out and locate those for you. Now, how to recognize a propane gas leak and what to do if you do suspect a leak. For propane, we add an odorant to it. It smells like rotten eggs, kind of stinky. So if you ever smell that, that could be an indicator that you have a gas leak. It kind of has a sulfur, cabbage, or rotten smell to it. Another way to notice a leak is you might hear a hissing or a noise coming from your meter or your regulator. You could also maybe notice by discolored plants or dead vegetation around the meter or around where maybe a leak may be. Or a gas cloud could be another indicator by visual. So if you do suspect a leak, the first thing you want to do is just get out of the area. We don't want you to try to ventilate. Don't open windows or doors. Don't try to shut off the appliance. Just get out of the area and call 911. And if you can, you could also call Edison and let us know where it is. Walk into the wind if you're outside. Get away from the gas. Don't use your phones or turn on lights or switches because those can be ignition sources. And again, I said if there's a gas cloud, you don't want to walk into it, just get out of the area. That's the safest way to address it, and then call 911. And that's pretty much all I have. As soon as possible, from a safe location, you're going to call 911 and Edison and let us know the description and location. And that is it. There's our customer service number and our website. If you have any additional questions, there's a lot of information on the Catalina site for gas and water.
Questions, anyone? Oh, yes, Amanda.
I'm Amanda Cook, and I manage the Building Services Department here at City of Avalon. And we issue all the plumbing permits for the plumbers who are installing gas appliances. So I had a call the other day from a customer who is trying to put in a gas appliance of some sort in his commercial business, and the manufacturer had asked them to see if they could find out exactly what the air-gas mixture ratio was. Do you know where that's available?
I could probably get you the exact numbers. I know that it's roughly a 60-40 mix from the propane to the air. 60, is it 60 for the propane?
Yes.
And then 40 for the air. But
Okay.
I'll look it up and get you the exact numbers.
Oh, that'd be great, because he was like, I can't find it. And I said, I know Edison has it. So that would be perfect. I'll get you one of my cards. Okay, perfect. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tracy. Thanks. Thank you, Michael. It's nice to see you back here. Okay. I guess that's it for presentations. Announcements and written communications.
I have no written communications, but I do have an announcement just to remind the public that we opened up the time frame for candidates, any future candidates, to pull nomination papers, and you have until December 6th at 5 p.m. That is for the mayor's seat, which is a 2-year term. We have 2 seats for a city council member, which for 4-year terms, and 1 seat for a city council member for a 2-year term. And then also for the city treasurer position, which is a 4-year term. That's it.
And is the city treasurer position at all a paid position?
Very nominal, like yours.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, have the exact number, but it's very minimal.
Okay, thanks. All righty, department head reports.
Good evening, Bob Greenlaw, Director of Public Works. A few quick items. Rain event is forecast here for late tonight and through Wednesday afternoon. Not much precipitation is expected, but our crews and facilities have been ready for an event. And that's important for the first flush. This is when we see all the stuff that's kind of building up over the year, and it's ready to go down the creek, and we don't want to see it go down our harbor. Pebbly Beach Road lift station, the mechanical portion of the lift station now is fully functioning. Work continues on the surface improvements such as the retaining walls, concrete surfacing, and the roadway restoration. We expect to see that project finish up sometime in December. Jordal is completing the project. And we're also ramping up for 2 maintenance type projects. So the roof repairs and Casino Way restrooms. So we'll replace that roof with some new roofing before we get too much more rain. Right now it's covered up with a tarp. And then also a valve replacement out at the Mount Ada Reservoir on that transmission main that comes from the reservoir down to Crescent. And we've had 2 main bursts of the pipe already within this last year, and we had no control out of that one valve, so that's a priority for us to get that replaced. So, and then in the future, we'll be replacing that whole pipeline as our funds are available. Any questions?
That probably was something that wasn't budgeted.
Well, it's all part of that CIP that we're putting together with the sewer and salt water and updating that. And we're realizing the pipeline's not in good shape, but it's best to have a valve to turn off so that we're not seeing that erosion. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
No, thank you. Any questions? Public Works? No, thank you.
Good evening, Captain John Hawking, Avalon Sheriff Station. There's one incident I wanted to talk about quickly. Is we had an allegation of a child molestation incident that allegedly happened in the city of Avalon. And I just wanted to let everybody know we have 3 separate investigations going on regarding this incident. The first one is from the Department of Child Services, Family Services. They're doing an independent investigation. The Sheriff's Department, we wrote a crime report in the city of Avalon, and it goes to our Special Victim Bureau. They're on the mainland in the city of Whittier. They conduct our investigations for any type of child abuse, whether it's physical, sexual. They're subject matter experts in that. And they're doing a full investigation right now, along with an internal investigation of the Sheriff's Department, because there was allegations that there's been previous child abuse incidents up to 30 years ago of deputies and personnel at Avalon Sheriff Station that no longer work for the Sheriff's Department, and we're still conducting an investigation into those allegations. So we have 3 separate investigations going on to determine if anything occurred, and if it did, our Special Victim Bureau is the ones responsible for the criminal part of it. Okay. And I just wanted to make it very clear that we take allegations like this very seriously, and the Sheriff's Department is in it 100% to determine what happened. Okay. Any questions for me?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Council. I just got one thing to advise you guys of. The Harbor Department has a new possible employee. His name is Liam Carroll. Stephen Carroll and his wife had a baby boy, 10 pounds last week. And so I wanted to reach out to them and let you know that. 10 pounds, you said? 10 pounds. So anyway, we got another prospect. You got any questions for us?
JJ, could and I'm sorry I didn't call you ahead of time, but could you just please clarify the discussion or the rumor that's in town that alleges that the decision on cruise ships is made by the Chamber and the Island Company?
No.
Could you just clarify that for us, please?
It's made through the harbor master, and I in turn, and that's the way it's always been, the way the federal anchorage system has been set up. They call us and ask us, are these dates available? Now, they call years in advance to be able to sell the tail. So we say yes or no. Then we say yes, they book it. Since I become harbor master, I contact Denise and we talk about it, and we know that having cruise ships on weekends is not desirable. So like we had one last Sunday. That was planned years prior to that. So it's not made to the Chamber. We will email the Chamber and say, hey, there's a cruise ship is scheduled to come in on this day, And it just so happens we had one on Friday, which was a small one, net geo, less than 60, 70 passengers, which is not really an impact anywhere. And then we had the big one that's less passengers than the imagination or inspiration. So,
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, we're good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Amanda Cook, Planning and Building Department. Just one really quick happy announcement. We heard back from the Round 6 grant application from the Coastal Commission for their next level of sea level rise adaptation, and they've awarded us $130,000. So that's great. So I just wanted to let everybody know that they're giving out a little bit of money. So.
That's great.
Do you have
Thank
any other questions for me?
Questions? No, thank you. Do we have questions of any of the other department heads? So Matt, you really don't have anything to say unless we call you up, right?
I can talk. You want to know how the audit's going? But...
The audit's going.
We know.
We had our Matt Baker, finance director. We had our external auditors on site last week, and they may be coming out for a day this week to follow up. The goal is with the audit to get it finalized before the end of the year. With the holidays, it may bleed into early January, but still pretty happy with the turnaround there. We just heard back from the MTA. We get separately audited by them, and that one's going to be finalized. No major findings, so that's positive as well. We're gearing up for business licenses. I was going to say this announcement in the next meeting, but we will have notices for business licenses going out in mid-December. Those licenses will be for the 2020 calendar year. Other than that, business as usual from the finance.
Great. And when are dog licenses? Do they happen at the same time?
Dog licenses are happening at the same time, and that's actually, I'm glad you brought it up, because we're really trying to get the word out. It's important that people get their dogs licensed so we know that they've had the appropriate shots and vaccinations and all that goes with it. So our plan is to start advertising and try to get the advertisements out a little sooner than we did last year. So you should be seeing it on the bonds board soon to come in, and I want to say it's around $30, but it's really important that we know all the animals in town have their vaccinations.
Good, great. Thank you. Michael Palmer, you're good for now? Okay, we'll be hearing from you later, I imagine. Okay, city manager report.
I just have a correction to make to the public, is that at the last council meeting, I announced that we would be discussing the cruise ship guidelines policy, so to speak, at the first meeting in December, which is December 3rd, but actually I had forgotten that one council member will not be present, so we were doing it at the second meeting on December 17th.
Great. City attorney.
Just a note that John Brown, who interviewed with me for this position 10 years ago, has been named the Public Lawyer of the Year by the State Bar Association. And so...
how does that reflect on you?
Poorly. I nominated him. That's about it. But anyway. Okay. For those who remember him, he was here for a couple meetings.
Oh.
I remember him.
I'm sure we don't. Do you remember him? Oh, good. All right. Well, that was brilliant. Thank you. Council member reports.
I have a couple things tonight. First, I would just like to give a little shout out to the city staff. Over the last 3 months, any issues that have come up, questions that I've had, any public comments that I've gotten, staff's been very responsive and diligent on getting those answers or situations resolved without having to bring it to this level, and these guys have done a really good job. Secondly, I just would like to make a little statement about some of the recent things going on in town. With the closure of the theater and cruise ships and a variety of other things, I'd just like to reach out to our community. We live in a great place. This island is wonderful. And some of the responses that I've seen, I don't have social media, I don't have Facebook or Twitter, any of those things, but I've heard, I've been told, and the responses are just not warranted for these situations, I believe. Everybody has a right to feel how they can be disappointed, they can not like something, but really solution-based conversation is what we need in this community. The vulgar responses, the language, it's just out of control. And I would just really like to reach out to everybody and say, if we want to get things done, let's work together. There's almost a form of bullying going on in some forms. When somebody responds in a different way, the backlash they have is incredible. I've never seen anything like that. We have things going on in our school that we all care about. What are we teaching our kids when they see the same thing going on? So just in general, I'd really like to reach out and say, let's just all come together as a community. A lot of great things can be done in this community if we work together on solutions.
Nicely
So.
said.
Well said.
Yes, well said, well said. Last Wednesday, I attended the Contract Cities meeting. It's at the Challenger Memorial in Downey, which was really kind of a cool place because that's where they built the part of the LIM, they built part of the Challengers, they built part of the Apollos. I guess there was a big aerospace industry in Downey. They were talking primarily about upcoming legislation, and hopefully they'll get us up to date on all that kind of stuff. And except for that, that's it.
And that's where our electric buses came from.
Not this particular place. Yeah, the neighborhood. Yeah. Don't hold it against me. Apollo 11 came from there.
Maybe they should have built it, and we would have been in better shape.
Maybe.
Just one thing tonight. I'll echo Steve's sentiments. I could not have said that any better, but did want to say something. So you've done a marvelous job. Second, I attended the Gateway Cities Council of Government meeting, and there's no notable actions to report.
I feel like Paul right now because I attended the State of Cannabis Workshop over the weekend, which was quite interesting. But not everybody has a smile on their face like they do when you come up, Paul. I don't know what it is. But it was very interesting. They talked about the Safe Banking Act that's in the Senate right now, and hopefully that will pass to make it easier for the legal money to be put into a system. One of the funny things they talked about is the packaging is so wonderful. It's kind of like drug packaging. You can't get in it if it's childproof. So they're complaining that it's too well packaged. The taxes that the cities are placing on it, along with the excise tax and the state tax, is just fueling the illegal business. And every one of them, I don't care if you were talking to a politician, there was a congressman there was a senator there were operators, there were growers, and it's just out of control in the way they're taxing that. They also, in the panel, one of the things they talked about was vaping because of all the media on vaping these days. If those vape pens come from a legitimate licensed facility, they are perfectly fine. So, and why do I say that? I guess, I don't know if I'm overstepping, but anyway, we know that the people in Avalon complain about the smell of cannabis on the streets. And vaping is a legal way to consume it that won't be offensive to someone else. I can't believe I'm getting that advice. But as you know, if you are over 21, it is legal. So. Also, on behalf of the city, because I'll say it later, we'd like to wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving, a very safe one, and hopefully you all get to eat and spend time with your loved ones, family, and friends. Okay, oral communications. This is an opportunity for the public to address items that are not on the agenda. You will be limited to 3 minutes, and no action will be taken. See?
Paul Birchall, Avalon Library. Nice to see you guys. Once again, thank you very much for supporting your library. We're now just business as usual over there. We're having a great time. Come on in and see. Oh my goodness. I've got new books starting to come in. I just left right now. We got like 4 crates of new books. And I was like, oh boy, that's going to be good. Because we're getting something like $40,000 worth of new books coming in. It's, Supervisor Hahn was just amazing to us. I don't think I've mentioned that up here before. She was amazing to us with what she gave us. She fought the whole library and this basically a fresh collection, which is going to be coming in over the next few months. Business as usual right now. It's going to be a quiet end of November because Thanksgiving's coming up. What I'm looking forward to in December. Mid-December, I'm going to do a genealogy workshop. Just a nice lady who does a lot of genealogical stuff, and she's going to teach us how to do a little genealogy. I just arranged for a little kids book party, which I did it last month with a little book called The Real Story of the Three Little Pigs. I had like 20 parents and 20 kids, and everybody sat and read it, and we had pig masks, and this time we're doing a book called Bark George, and I've got like a lot of puppets. That's going to be really fun. I'm going to do some Christmas stuff towards the end of the month. I'm going to make snowflakes and whatnot and spin drums. But I'm basically trying to now just find the business as usual aspect of our library. And just come on in. It's awesome. We're going to have a wonderful year here.
Great.
One quick question for you.
Of course.
When's your next ukulele?
We're doing ukulele. That's the Friends of the Library program. Mondays at 4 o'clock. I still have a bunch of ukuleles, and I believe there is still money from Allison Osinski's grant that she managed to get for us. We still have some ukuleles, still have some
Bags.
yeah, thank you. I don't know if we have any tuners left. But it's a great program. I sometimes do it as well. I'm the worst at it. I'm so bad at it, but it's very relaxing.
I remember you invited me to come a couple months ago, and I told you I would, and I haven't. So
okay,
I'm gonna show up to
come
the
on over.
ukulele.
Pick up your ukulele at the library. I still have about 6.
Okay. Check it out.
Come join us Monday at 4 for absolute beginners. Then 5 for people who've done it for a while and want to practice.
But it's not ukulele, it's ukulele.
Ukulele.
Okay. Well, but I'm not going to be very good. So.
Anything else?
No, thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay. Consent calendar.
We have 4 items this evening on the consent calendar. The first one is actions from the November 5th, 2019 regular meeting of the City Council. Second one is warrants, and that's to approve the disbursement for October 25th through November 8th, totaling $2,352,497.65. The third one is to adopt 2 resolutions. The first one is authorizing the Assistant City Manager to serve as the Director and the Finance Director to serve as the alternate Director to the PARSAC Board. The second one is to adopt the resolution authorizing the Director, the Finance Director as the Director, we're switching it, and the Assistant City Manager as the alternate Director to the California Transit System Joint Powers Authority, and we're in that because of our transit system of our buses out there. Number 4 is to authorize the city manager to enter into the proposed contract agreement with Los Angeles County Department of Public Health to provide safety inspection and enforcement services of commercial cannabis facilities, begin the process of modifying the Avalon Municipal Code to reflect the contracted changes upon discussions with the county regarding implementation of the inspection program. And that's to the satisfaction of the city attorney and myself.
Council?
I'll move staff 1 to 4.
Could you modify that just to be
Yes.
1 to 3?
I'll move staff 1 to 3.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second.
Comments? Call for the vote.
So I need to clarify, then you pulled number 4, just
Yes,
for the record?
thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
All ayes.
The county's got their dirty little grubby hands in it.
Exactly. Item number 4. So this is prepared by Devin.
Good evening. My name is Devin Hart, Administrative Analyst. So I just wanted to touch on this item and then clarify some questions that City Council have had about this item. It's regarding contracting the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health to provide safety inspection and enforcement services for our commercial cannabis businesses in Avalon. This was part of an ordinance that was passed at the county level in December 2017. In September of this year, they started they started contacting cities, trying to engage them in contracting county services to provide inspection oversight for cannabis facilities. Those services are still being drafted by the Los Angeles County. They're moving slowly through the process, just like most of the state and other cities. To date, 15 cities have verbally authorized the county to begin the process of amending the municipal code and adopting an agreement. They include Culver City, Baldwin Park, Montebello, LA City, and Lancaster. They're larger, more diverse cannabis industries than what we have here. We just have the one cannabis delivery business, but they would provide the level of oversight and expertise that city staff don't currently have at this time. Included in their inspections would be employer practices, cannabis safety procedures, facilities inspections, including plumbing and fixtures, inspections on signage and licensing requirements, and operational standards. So there's 2 fees associated with the contract agreement. Neither of those fees would be paid by the city. Both would be paid by our permit holder. So if it was a brand new business without any inspections, there's a site inspection fee of about $1,500. Since our business has already, or our permit holder already has been inspected by the state and the city, they can opt to just receive a site plan inspection, which is $339, and then twice a year inspection fee of just over $1,900. So, and then that $1,900 would cover the inspections categories that I laid out previously.
And that was 2 inspections a year, though, correct?
That is what the county is shooting for right now. As I mentioned, they're still in their planning process, so we requested a copy of their inspection form, and it's still in the draft phase. So if the city council were to authorize staff to move forward on this item, we would give the county a call and then begin negotiating through their draft model ordinance and what our final agreement would look like. The initial agreement is for until 2024, and then we have 2 options to renew for a period, we have 3 options to renew for a 1-year term. And then we could cancel if we decide it's not working for us. We could cancel at any time. We just have to give about 180 days notice to the county.
Which is 6 months.
Yes.
Which is not, no, but that's, 180 days sometimes doesn't sound like a lot of time, but 6 months sounds like a long time.
And then to clarify, included in your packet is Exhibit B2 at the end. There's that Emblem Design, which council members have asked about. I called in the 12th hour, and the county confirmed since that emblem would only be required on facilities where where retail sales would take place at the facility. Since we would not have any retail sales at that facility, the emblem would not need to be displayed. It could go in the same spot. In our ordinance, we require the installation of our business permit. It would just go at the same spot inside the facility, not on the outside of the door, available to the public or anything like that.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, you may.
Excuse me, is Long Beach inspected by the county, or they do it themselves?
Currently, Long Beach inspects themselves. The county just barely rolled out this program in September, so the county doesn't have their inspection protocol completely laid out. Right now, they just have a loose framework, but have not begun doing any inspections across the county.
Could we check with Long Beach and see if they'd be interested in inspecting over here?
We can do that.
Well, you have asked that question on a larger scale.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not on the agenda, but can we look into that in a whole, to do all of our inspections, not just this perhaps in the future? Denise, is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I don't want to do the inspection for $900 every 6 months. What's it got to take, 20 minutes?
Well, I know. Okay.
And then I just had one more thing I wanted to mention. County involvement would not preclude operations. So if we got our permit holder up and running, and at a later time, it'll take the city, at least if we to move forward tonight, it would take the city at least 90 days before we had an ordinance in place, and then it would take an additional amount of time to finalize the contract negotiation agreement with the county. So if at any point during that time our current permit holder began operations, involving the county would not preclude them from continuing to operate. The county would just assume that that the permit holders operating above board, they'd come in for their inspections, and unless something was egregious, like a vermin inspection or something like, a vermin infestation or something wild like that, the permit holder would be allowed to continue to operate until they met whatever requirements the county had.
Well, exactly, Ole. And you shouldn't whisper, you need to speak out, because people say...
Another level of government
Right.
interference.
And the other one is, and they can override us.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm not real happy with this at all. I do believe, I know our permit holder wants to make a comment, but, and I know that talking to the city attorney, he's got questions of them, so I don't really want to say let's table that, but I mean, I could easily vote and say let's not do this, because right now we're only talking about delivery. Before, we're not manufacturing, we're not growing, we're not packaging, we're not doing any of that. And so I personally don't feel the need for this at this time until something bigger happens. Like if we ever get a dispensary. But again, see, and this is where Devin and I have had a conversation, and she's going to talk to you about Coca-Cola. But, but I mean, all of the packages, everything that comes is already prepackaged, and it's the response. And if there's a recall or anything on the product, it goes to the distributor, because they're the ones that are distributing, and then that recall would happen. And I guess I'm not real concerned about that at a local level, and that's, or if there's any concern at all, that would be that one little piece of that. But anyway, council, it's up to you. And then, of course, if Carl would like to speak, he's more than welcome to speak.
We can table it till the need arises.
I like that.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
But Carl, would you like to speak anyway?
Ole, could you please repeat?
Oh,
You're going to
put-
table
We're going
it
to
until the
table it
need?
until the need arises, till we have something other than a medical delivery service in Avalon.
Okay, so you better put that in the form of a motion.
I'll put that in the form of a motion.
I'll second it.
I can't make any comments?
Oh, yeah, you can. Well, let's do it before we vote. Okay.
So some things that weren't mentioned that I'm a little concerned with is the main purpose of this county is to provide public health and safety issues. I think with one license plate, the license plate is not the public health and safety issue, it's the illicit market. And it even says in here that the county is not required to investigate or respond to any complaint regarding a cannabis facility that does not possess a commercial cannabis activity license. And if the city requests help with a non-cannabis commercial activity license facility, the city shall reimburse the county for all costs. So what are they there for? You're still doing the work. It also says city staff is still required to assist county department regarding investigations of applicants. How does this alleviate the staff's you're literally going to be checking some boxes. The requirements to get a permit from them is odor control plan, cannabis recall plan, waste management plan, employee training program, and cleanliness standards. The city's already required that. It's just a matter of checking the boxes, and I already have plans in place for that. Why does someone else need to come in, charge me almost $2,000, and then forgive me, but that plan check fee, if I just decide to move my safe 2 feet or move a camera 2 feet because it's in the best interest of my business, I have to submit a plan check fee of $1,500 for them to approve it. I already have to submit a plan check fee to the city, and I already have to submit, not a fee, but I already have to submit a plan change to the city and the state, but they don't require a fee. I'm having to pay them a fee, and it just goes deeper. I understand when you have a health department coming over here to look at a bunch of food service establishments, or when you have ABC coming over and looking at a bunch of liquor establishments. But we have one establishment. If this ever grows into something bigger, or if there are licensees that are dealing with raw materials, then it seems like it makes sense. But we're not there. Devin's even mentioned that they're not prepared, or they haven't finalized everything. So why are we going to be their test subjects when we sign away everything? They have a clause that says no conflict with the state. They also have a clause that says no conflict with federal laws. But there is no protections for the city. They require you to post an emblem I'm being told they're not. Well, I'm still required. By their definition, I'm a retail location. So I'm required to obtain that emblem. And I can't qualify for that emblem if I'm not a Type 10 or Type 12 license. So therefore, the state, the county can now deem me as an unlicensed location, even though I've checked all the boxes with the state and the city.
Right. And
so,
I'm sorry, but I'm not going to make him stop.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but I do want to say something before I forget it. While I appreciate that I think we all agree that there's work that needs to be done and questions answered on this, but I want to formally disagree with your assessment that just because we have one business in town, you should not be inspected. I believe if we had one restaurant in town or one hotel in town, that hotel or that restaurant, even if it's just one, should be inspected.
Right, and my fee originally included the city staff inspecting me and checking those boxes before I opened.
Right.
So that fee's already been assessed. But under the agreement, the city still assumes complete responsibility in regulatory function. The city must also indemnify the county. The county also has sole and exclusive option to amend the agreement. As far as I'm concerned, this law was set up in place to give locals authority and give the locals the say first. The city of Avalon has said that they don't want any exterior signage or they don't want any signage on a building. Well, if they require me to have something on the outside of a building, now we're limiting city rights. Now the county's coming in and they supersede everything. So the city code will supersede any conflicts with local law, taking away the power of the city.
But we've just clarified that they're not requiring you to have the sign in your delivery business.
Well, that's not the only case. They take away the city power in many cases. So it's not the purpose.
Well, okay, I believe that, and if you want to make a couple other more points, that's fine too, Carl. But providing that information, if then in sometime in the future we really look at this seriously for another reason, because for right now everything's cool, I think your comments would be well made when they're talking about a contract with the county at some point in the future, but it will not be.
I just recommend the county think of us, the little guy, before they ask us to actually be a part of their thing. And
yeah,
No,
I appreciate your comments, and I think we've covered them well. I mean, I think we've kind of addressed them and said the reasons we don't really feel like it needs to happen today or in the near future until business grows, maybe literally. Okay. It just comes out. I don't know.
Devin?
Anyway, thank you very much. Okay.
And Devin, Carl, have you met with city staff to talk about your concerns on this item?
No, not today.
He just got it. That's what he did.
my phone's open, my voicemail is open. I'm more
You're the
than
one
happy
with questions. Have you reached out to meet with city staff regarding your concerns?
No.
Like all your questions and things that you have on this, that's why I'm asking, you haven't met with city staff to share your concerns with the contract?
No.
Okay.
I'd never had an opportunity to. This was put on the agenda on Friday, and it was put directly on the consent calendar, and I had one weekend to really look over it, so I didn't have time to contact anybody really.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we all got it at the same time, so we all had the weekend to go through it. I'm just asking, I know you have a lot of questions. I'm curious to know what all those questions are, but it's really the nuts and bolts of putting all of this together is really Devin, city staff. So I would just recommend that you reach out to schedule an appointment to share your other comments with city staff so that they can present all of that to us when and if it does come back.
Right, and I've said this before. If stuff comes in, like the county reaching out to you guys in September for a contract, I've said multiple times, my lines are open. Please reach out to me if you have questions about any of this law, because I'm probably more up on this stuff than anybody. So
You're saying
I've put myself out there, and if this has been information and the city's been contacted since September and I've only known about it since Friday, it's hard for me to collaborate with the city to put something in front of you guys.
It's a two-way street.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Oh.
So you had indicated that there was no cost to the city with this, that it would be bared by the...
Yeah, there'd be no cost, no direct cost to the city. So he is correct in saying that they would only inspect licensed facilities, and the reason for that is if there's it's California and it's a brand new industry, so there's lots of rules and regulations regarding all aspects of our permit holders' operations, everything from disposal of product to how it's transmitted and how it's transported to the island and how it's stored. So if there were a breakdown in the disposal of the product, it's considered a hazardous material at that point. If there's a breakdown in disposal, and it's hard to, if everyone just thinks real generically, it's not Carl, it's just a John Doe in Pasadena. If there's a breakdown in disposal and a dog were to get into a dumpster and get sick, that liability, when people come looking for liability or where the breakdown occurred, unless city staff does routine inspections of how the process is implemented, there's that gap. So the county's offering with their twice-a-year inspections to try and fill in part of that gap by inspecting and making sure that waste material is properly disposed of, material is properly stored, that the facility stays up to date with all of its regulations.
But they're only inspecting the licensed ones.
I know, and the illicit ones are the bad ones.
Yeah, they only inspect the licensed ones. So yes, the illicit business is not inspected under the scope of this contract.
Exactly.
Carl had indicated that the county would start to have the city do stuff that would incur us cost. Is that correct?
Yes, so that would be correct in terms of if we found out there was an illegal distributor on the island or an illegal business operating, and we asked the county to step in and inspect that facility, because that facility isn't a licensed permit holder, that's where the fee to the city would kick in. But otherwise, unless there was an illegal business that the city asked the county to inspect, there would be no cost. More likely, if there was an illegal business operating, we would send code enforcement out to shut them down, and if they didn't comply, we'd involve Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department.
So if all these other cities, big cities, are doing this, and LA County probably has pretty strict guidelines, and they're probably doing it for a reason, why are we not? I mean, I understand the fees, and I understand that we don't want more fees for stuff, but it's kind of a serious issue, and make things are right, and if we're just getting off the street. So I'm not on board. If we start this process, then it's just we're along with them to when it happens, right? And there's no other things that we have to do at this point.
No, there would be nothing else that we would have to do in this moment. We would begin the process, and it's a boilerplate template in your packets, but the end result would not necessarily be a boilerplate template or a boilerplate agreement. It'd be something that was more fashioned to fit our needs and what the industry looks like here. So it's beneficial in that we would get to walk through the process with county, but it's fundamentally up to city council what direction they provide to staff.
Did you make a motion already? And there's a
motion and a second. Yeah.
I would like to make.
Well,
I guess I can't make a motion the other way then, right?
No, but
we'll call for the vote. See what happens.
I see what your point is, Steve, but I still think that there are questions on what is here. It would be one thing if the city continued on having conversations. Carl has a list of questions and concerns with it that I want him to have the opportunity to address with city staff. So I don't think that we can move. I don't feel comfortable moving forward with this as it is tonight because of those reasons, but I don't necessarily want to go line by line through this particular document because this isn't what the document would be.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Because right now it would just have the delivery service, and if you read all these pages,
I read through it, yeah.
Look at all the other things they talk about, and delivery is mentioned one time that I underlined. So I mean, it's so minimal. And when you're talking about the city of LA or county of LA, you're talking about hundreds of licenses.
89 cities.
89 cities, and all of those that have approved them. I mean, I don't know. So this is small potatoes at this point. I couldn't come up
It might be, but it's still, we shouldn't just because, like Cindy said, if it's only one, we should be doing what other places are doing. I mean,
right.
if you want to work on it more, I would probably vote no, but I will go along with it as if, we bring it back to after you answer your questions. But I feel that that's the direction that we should go in, to go with them and be more strict on it.
Okay, and I hear you. And Carl?
Malcursa law only requires a local approval and then state license.
All right.
There's nothing in there about the county. The county's trying to jump in, and it's not perfected yet. It's
right.
until that happens, until I think if you guys pass something where the county allows you to forfeit some of your rights and decision-making power, I don't think that's in the best interest of the city.
Right.
The city was given the power to do this, and they should be the ones to make the decision. If you have to indemnify the county, and forgive me, but even if I get investigated, the county's going to ask city staff for information and ask for city time to investigate me.
Yes.
But the county can deem me illegal because of certain situations that the city and the state think I'm completely on the up and up, but they won't investigate the real illegal operators.
I'm hearing, we're hearing that, yes. And then Devin is right behind you.
I just wanted to make a quick point about the county's involvement. Our municipal code section 520.080 does require that he receive county health department permits. So the county is going to be involved no matter what. What this contract is just to have them come and inspect after they issue that initial permit.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay. Well, would you repeat your motion?
Table till such time as it's needed, and investigate alternatives like Long Beach.
And needed is defined as when we have other than
single
medical cannabis delivery service.
Yes.
And it's been moved in second.
Can we modify that?
What are you going to change it to say?
That after the questions are answered that you want answered, that it comes back to council to talk about it again, not just when there's another one and only one, but to answer all the questions but to bring it back at a later date once those questions are answered.
Well, let's call for his vote first.
Okay.
Okay, call for the vote.
Two ayes, Mayor Marshall, Councilmember Olson, and 2 noes, Councilmember Haves, Mayor Pro Tem Cassidy.
Well, so let me bring up another question. So you bring up your motion, she seconds it. If we denied it, this whole thing drops.
Correct, there's no action taken.
There's no action at all.
Okay. Well, I'd like to make a motion that we research it, we talk to the current operator, and to make sure that city's not being completely controlled, but then we do have the stricter guidelines once we go through and answer those questions, but at least bring it back to the council at a later date once those communications have happened, to bring it back to council to discuss.
Okay. Yeah, because you're not assuming that even when the questions get answered, we're all going to be in agreement.
No, and we might still not, and I might still, but I just want, at least once those are answered, to bring it back for a discussion. So I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
But why do we want Devin to waste your time with the county if we're not going with the county?
Why don't we get that question answered first?
Why don't we get the question answered first? Because Long Beach has got a program, because there's dispensaries all over the place.
Well,
And
I
Long
think
Beach
Devin
is
can
one
still
of-
ask that question,
Question, yeah,
and I
and
think
just-
that there's more research we're asking everyone to do.
Yeah, I don't think it hurts to run parallel paths, and I'm
Not at all.
more than happy. Any service to the city is not a waste of time, right?
What is it then again?
I agree with that, and it's not that much extra time, correct? So.
Well, she's taking this cannabis stuff pretty serious, so you don't know, Steve. Yeah. Okay, so your motion is get all the questions answered, blah, 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 come back. You would get your questions answered, you'd be talking, and now we've got attorney's time wrapped up into this.
Yeah, in response to the mayor's inquiry, I have some questions about how the ordinance fits in with our ordinance and what other cities are doing. And so I would be intending on talking with the county attorney who drafted the ordinance, just to get an understanding, so that if we want to proceed, we're doing it the right way that the county says. I've also reached out to all the attorneys in my office that represent cities We have about 12 in we have 13 in Los Angeles. So far, none of those cities has taken the county up on this program.
Yeah. Okay, so there was, now, okay, so what happened? We did ours and we flunked. Okay, and now you made yours. You seconded it. Any other comments? Call for the vote.
3 ayes, 1 no. Mayor Marshall.
I knew you were going to do that.
But it's okay. It's
It's education.
I know.
It really
I know.
gets
It's not a big deal.
everybody's needs met. It's
I know.
important to
Can I have
research
clarification,
it,
please, from the city attorney? So we are not, though, authorizing him to go out and change the ordinance or come up with any wording
No.
until we come back for a full discussion
That's correct.
and determine if we're changing.
That
Just
is-
clarification. Thank you.
Very correct.
It'll be one call.
Okay. Okay, now you didn't make a snide comment just now when you said one call. You didn't say how long's that call going to be? Oh, well, you're slipping.
Well, I'm assuming that he's also going to pick up the phone call the first time I call, so it may be a couple.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, item number 5, and we have Jim Lujahan from the Catalina Island Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau here today. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. All right. So, good evening, Mayor, members of council, and city staff. I have previously submitted to the city our audited financials for the fiscal year ending June 30, and I'm going to just hit on some highlights tonight, and then I'm happy to entertain any questions that you might have. Unlike previous years' reports, I have less color, less links embedded, and everything to hopefully make it a little more readable for those in the audience, because I was very aware in the past that the blue backgrounds didn't serve us well. So here's just a quick summary of the things I'm going to walk us through tonight. I'll quickly revisit our mission, talk about the overall state of Catalina Island tourism, and then relate how that matches to the audited financials and the measures and activities that we're called upon to meet under the municipal code. And then just one slide that gives a good snapshot view of our competitive set and where we sit in the tourism universe for California in that regard. First of all, on the left, you'll see a list of our current board of directors, many of whom are in the room. And if you're one of our board members, if you'd raise your hand quickly.
Michael was
for
here somewhere.
members of the audience.
Oh, which of you? Oh, cool.
And they're here as well as I am to answer any questions or concerns tonight. The mission is to attract visitors and advocate for commerce on Catalina Island. The purpose paragraph is a lot more words. I won't read through that, but that is what the IRS measures our nonprofit status against. That's the documentation that they hold us accountable to. And then last year in January, we held a planning session with our board where we adopted the vision and goals that you see there. There's many sub-goals underneath those goals that actually have measurables attached to them. But that is that Avalon and Catalina Island make up a community where tourism promotion and economic vitality are supported by residents, local businesses, and leaders to ensure economic growth, encourage conservation of precious resources, be stewards of Catalina's unique character, prepare for crisis or change, establish and maintain ample finances, and be flexible and adaptive. And I think that contrary to a lot of the rumor and innuendo you hear around town, these are the principles by which we're guiding our organization day to day. And hopefully, as I speak tonight, that will be further reflected out for you. Our fiscal year visitor counts were about 1 million people again, just down a hair from the prior year. The allocation to us, audit adjusted, for the fiscal year was $1,187,900. From that, the fiscal year tourism-driven revenue, what that means is the sorry, lost my place. The auditors look at the revenue that we spend on tourism promotion, because that's the ordinance requirement, and that's that line there that we. I'm totally on the wrong place on my slide. I'm sorry, that's not. I'm going to skip on down. It equates to 55% of the general fund from TOT. The ROI is $9.77. That comes $9.77. That comes directly back to the city, and that means that our cost of visitor acquisition is $1.16. If you take that million plus visitors divided by the $1 million+ dollars. So a pretty good deal. Try buying Google AdWords for that price. According to the 2016 visitor profile study, the visitor spending in our community supports 47.7% of our jobs. And incremental household savings in taxes not paid is $4,997. And that's a huge benefit to our household. When I was working in Santa Fe, we hit $747 per household, and we were shouting it from rooftops. To see that big of a number in savings is...
I'm sorry, but I don't understand that.
If you didn't have the visitors, how much would it cost to provide
That's
sewer,
how much
trash?
more it would cost. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Yes. And for the fiscal year, our hotel occupancy was 62%. So, doggone it, I made the type really big, I thought, but it still looks small on the screen. So I'll just hit a couple of the highlights here. We know that we had a wetter than normal winter, and that took an economic toll on us. So for the month of January, probably too small to see to the audience, I'm sorry, but we had 16 rain days. That resulted in a drop year over year from 52,997 visitors down to 48,380 visitors. Our occupancy went from 42.1% down to 37.6%. Admissions tax went from 42,946 to 29,357. And skipping over to the cross-channel wharfage, we went from $141,015 down to $128,140. And that was true again in February and a little bit in March. And then once we got into more mild weather, the impacts were less severe. And I just wanted to call that out. We had total 53 rain days so far this calendar year. And in the prior calendar year total, with 2 more months to go, there were 26. So obviously, that's a big part of what has affected our economy here this year. But we'd certainly be in worse shape had we not had that rain. Imagine if we were at stage 4 drought mitigation right now. So here you see that 1,024,614 visitor count compared to a 3-year average of 1,067,067, a 5-year average of 1,848,000, and a 10-year average of 985,314. So we continue to exceed the 10-year average, but we have trailed this year our 3- and 5-year average. Likewise, predictable, of course, the hotel occupancy resting at 62%. On a 3-year basis, we had exceeded that finally just a little bit at 62.3%. 5-year, 61%, and 10-year, only 55%. So despite those rain days, our occupancy remained strong. I think we all know that a lot of our hotel occupancy for this year was driven by construction crews working on the other projects going on in town. So we continue to have a little bit of an artificial boost there that won't necessarily be sustainable as we go forward. So now's where my lack of pretty links and colors really becomes apparent, because I thought, for the sake of addressing so many of the concerns that have been brought to your attention this year, I'd make it really basic. And I have down the left column what the city ordinance requires of us, and down the right column how the audited financials address that. So under section 32101, the ordinance defines how we are allocated the sums. I won't read all the legalese, but I have it up there for members of the audience and viewers at home to read. The TOT funds I've already mentioned, audit adjusted $1,187,900. Our total budget was $1,761,287, of which 26.99% went to salaries and benefits, not 50-some%, as I know you've heard from members of the community. And that supported a staff of 8, including 3 part-timers, not 12, again, as I know you've heard from the community. Our total tourism promotion allocation was $1,622,000. This is where I was stumbling over my words earlier. That's post-audit adjusted what the auditor said we actually spent to market the island. So we exceeded the TOT funds significantly this year, and I'll walk you through some of the details at another point of where that big jump ahead in spending came. Our earned revenue was $554,300, and that includes both revenue earned and spent toward music promotion, which is a subtlety in the ordinance that we are called upon to do, which this year was $50,000, including an expansion of our offerings to bring more local music to the stage. Under Section 3-2.102, this is where we're called upon to be accountable for any adjustments in our spending. So a budget surplus resulted in the prior fiscal year end audit of $120,500. That was due to auditors feeling that programs that were multi-year and weren't fully expensed in that audit year, that they should be carried forward and encumbered on our books. So that's what we did. That also includes an annual year-end true-up. So there was a fairly big lump sum that hit our books after the fiscal year had closed, for which we wrote a budget planning to spend that money. As a result, by the time this year's books were closed, it shows a negative versus that positive the prior year of $148,700. But remember, we had to spend that $120,500 as part of it, plus that true-up amount. So more or less an even out there. We're also called upon under item A to provide visitor information services. So I'll just hit a couple of the high points. Our visitor center on the pier is open 7 days a week, 364 days a year. And for the past fiscal year, we answered 11,000 phone calls, over 10,000 travel inquiry emails, and assisted 40,700 walk-in travelers, in addition to some other online sources. Under Section 3.2.102, Section B, we're called upon to provide basically what you or I would call public relations. So here's some of the ways in which we did that. 75,000 copies of the Catalina Island Visitor Guide were printed and distributed, 175,000 copies of our visitor map. Direct media relations included over 60 pitches, 22 releases, and the hosting of 39 travel writers and or influencers. We sent 20 consumer e-blasts out to our list of 140,000 subscribers. We also worked particularly closely this year with Visit California, and we got some amazing lift from that, having Catalina Island depicted in a global TV campaign called Spoiled. And we were in both a Kidifornia and the Spoiled campaign this year because of that relationship. Our website enjoyed 1.5 million visits. And our Facebook followers grew 9%, Instagram followers grew a whopping 389%, and we posted 32 blogs, resulting in 3,545 page views just to those pages alone. And I know I've told you guys in the past that the primary motivation for the blog is really to raise our search engine optimization by having fresh content always coming forward. We do them twice a month, but they're also getting a lot of consumer hits there, so I thought it was important to call that out. Section 3.2.102, item C, is where we're supposed to promote the city for professional business, trade, conventions, and business meetings. We delivered this year 191 RFPs for groups of 10 or more, considering Catalina as a venue for their event or meeting. We sent e-blasts to meeting and event planners, and we are active members of Meeting Planners International and the Society for Incentive Travel Executives, where we work closely with them, as well as a growing and ever-evolving relationship with Discover Los Angeles, our counterparts in Los Angeles, the CVB there, to host delegates attending either their meetings or to work in concert with them when they are hosting meeting planners, to have them also come to the island.
I just have a quick question on the 191 RFPs that were sent. Do you know how many of those 191 actually came to the island?
How many actually, we call it conversion.
Okay.
And we have very poor numbers on that, quite honestly, because the conversion doesn't take place on our account. It's the individual hotel or wedding planner or destination who actually makes the sale. We deliver the vehicle, they make the sale. We do our best to get feedback. Sometimes we don't know till we're walking down the street and we actually see the badges hanging on somebody that became a piece of business. Mm-hmm. It's also important to keep in mind that often we're dealing with someone now for something that's 3 years out, 5 years out. So the conversion is not necessarily quick.
I understand. Thank you.
Let's see, 102D, get the right page in front of me. So some of the other services that we're called upon by the city to provide are interesting and I thought worthy of your attention. We continue to provide the film liaison services. This year, 27 permits were processed, along with hosting of 10 film scouts. We contributed $50,000 toward the bird abatement program. We raised $34,000 toward the July 4th events. And I have been the primary representative of our organization for meetings with the hospital consortium, the water consortium, the events committee, although many of our members are involved in that. And remember, we are happily your hosts each year or each election cycle for the election night. I could have added on here, so I'll just throw it in verbally, a deep level of participation in the community's concerns at Avalon School. Whether it's been me or other members of our board, we've been very engaged there. We are in compliance with the audit submission and are implementing additional gap standards for the coming year. In particular, we've been advised by the CPAs that best practices now require us to give a value for all who pay dues to our organization in something that is a mission match to us. So since we're about developing commerce on the island, we will have to now equate those dues to something that they get in a direct service. So we're working on creating those fund accounting systems internally. What that means is more accountability for the use of our funds, but it's also going to mean year over year that a year from now, our prior year financials are not going to look real comparable. They're going to be divided up very differently than they've been historically.
And this is the same audit firm you've used before?
This is the same audit firm, but 2 years ago we went out to bid, and they were our audit firm for several years before that. Yeah. They came back by a large margin with the lowest cost for providing the audit services, many zeros less than any other audit firm. So we agreed to go forward with them under the auspices that they would change up the audit team. So we're still the same firm, but we do not have the same auditors in-house checking up on
I was just questioning if they've been doing your audit for a couple of years and they come up with this new deal for you.
Well, they didn't come up with it. It's a best practice for across the board for nonprofits. Okay. So they're advising us that we would be in good stead to adopt those best practices.
Back up one page. The significant deficiency unredeemed gift certificates.
Oh, yes, thank you. I meant to highlight that. So the IRS has ruled that sold gift certificates are a cash equivalent. Therefore, we cannot write them off or have an expiration date on them. We must carry them on our books. In the nearly improbable situation where every single outstanding gift certificate were redeemed on the same day, there are times of the year where we might not have the cash on hand to pay all of those out. So that is considered a significant finding. We have been in contact with an attorney in the past year trying to get a piece of advice that the accountants were hoping we would get, that we have not yet been successful in getting, where we might be able to put the numbers of certificates that are more than, say, 10 years old on the unclaimed property roll with the state, and therefore be able to take those off of our books. But so far, we've gotten a zero response on the attorney. I'm drawing a blank on the exact language they used, but that their research was inconclusive, I think, was the term.
Then you have to send the state the money for unclaimed property.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
But what gift certificates are you actually selling?
So we have had a 20-plus year program of selling gift certificates that are redeemable in most of, not all of, because then everyone opts in, most of our member businesses. So you buy a gift certificate, they come in $25 allotments, and on the back, depending on what point in history you bought that gift certificate, are all the businesses that were allowing you to redeem it in their place of business. We sell most of them around Christmas time, or we sell them often when we know that there's a large group coming into town. That's one. It's a kind of a subtle conversion metric on the large groups, because very often the meeting planner will want to have as a welcome gift for all of their attendees one of these gift certificates.
I didn't know you did that, so that's okay. Thank you.
103. So funds obtained by the Chamber of Commerce from the city shall not be used for political purposes. Again, I thought this was a subtlety that was important to talk about. When we do host that candidate forum, we do it with non-TOT funds. We don't even use TOT dollars toward that, and otherwise our bylaws exclude political action along the lines of endorsing or opposing a candidate. It would take an action of the board to change the bylaws in order to take that on should we ever go there, and I don't foresee that being the will of our current board. Mm-hmm. The audited financials are on deposit with the city. They're also available on our website, and we report to GuideStar, a third party who rates your accountability as a nonprofit. We do not have the platinum status yet that the museum has. They're the rock star nonprofit on the island, but we're close on their heels. So we're going to see if we can get that by uploading many, many reams of more documents to their website shortly. We would willingly comply with any request to inspect our books and accounting-related city funds beyond our own audit that we do on an annual basis, but of course it's an open door, open book policy, and we would comply should you call upon us to do that. And then just a few other quick highlights on important things we do. We provide research and reporting. I won't go down the list, but all of these items are on our website and updated and refreshed as frequently as we possibly can. Something like the visitor profile study, I know a handful of our nonprofits have used when writing grants because it gives a good detail of the demographic of who's coming here and who they might be able to serve with their grant funds. We have professional affiliations. Again, I won't read down the list, but I think it's interesting to note that increasingly our membership in the Global Sustainable Tourism Council is being noticed as an accolade that is very much appreciated. It came up during our attendance at the cruise conference and a handful of other places with meeting planners of late. Just for clarification, we have met the membership criteria. We are not certified. That's another whole level in the GSTC Council. It requires a few years of someone representing the organization attending classes. And so far, most of their classes have been in Europe or the Faroe Islands, so our travel budget hasn't really made it an affordable possibility. But we're going to do everything we can to meet their recommended standards, including even things like simple black type on a PowerPoint. Should anyone print it, it's an ink saving. There's just all kinds of layers to that. A few other important things we offer that may or may not be on your awareness. We offer a free online accommodations booking engine on our website. It's subject, to, of course, to the properties putting inventory in an available res system from which we can scrape, but we do not charge a commission for that. I already mentioned the blogs and social media. We have microsites at careforcatalina.com, which is our green tourism initiative. cruisetocatalina.com to help familiarize visitors coming to Avalon by port with how they can best navigate our community, and filmcatalina.com, where we've assembled all of that film permit information. We host events like the Care for Catalina Community Cleanup Days, for which I'll just quickly acknowledge this past one, even though it's outside the fiscal year, we bettered our attendance. We went from 60-some community members to 70 this time. So we are growing in engagement as well there. The Catalina Island Concert Series, the Triathlon, the Taste Around and Restaurant Week, Shop Catalina, New Year's Eve Gala, and of course we support throughout the year non-Catalina Island Chamber of Commerce events. So I know too that you have been told that it is inappropriate for us to receive the amount of funds that we do from the city, so I did a little bit of research. According to the Western Association of Chamber Executives, 61% of their chamber members get government funding, and the slide on the left shows how those chambers of commerces are spending that money. And I'll just hit the ones that I think we're a match on: economic development and retention, community events, city promotion and marketing, workforce job training, tourism promotion, visitor center, and downtown promotion management. Also checking another source, Destination Marketing Association of the West, 33% of the DMOs in our budget set, and the next slide will help illustrate why that's important and why it's a low number relative to the one above for the WACE. But 33% of DMOs in our budget comparison set receive city allocations of TOT or bed tax, and an additional 11% receive a county allocation. In some places, you may not have the city collecting that TOT. Some places, it's the county. So here's that competitive set analysis, and I'll just hit on a few of them. Palm Springs, California, where the TOT rate is 13.5%. And their occupancy patterns are fairly similar in reverse to ours, ending up with an annual occupancy that's pretty comparable. Tourism promotion budget, $16,890,000. San Diego, it's a combination of a couple of T-bids and TOT funding, but $41 million. Anaheim, Santa Ana, 15% TOT. They also have a tourism business improvement district. Total tourism promotion, not their full budgets, these are their tourism promotion budgets, $500,000. Bottom of the line, there we are, Avalon, California, $1,622,000. That was that audit adjusted amount that went toward tourism promotion for the fiscal year just ended. So I hope that that is informative to you when you hear from some folks who think that we are heavily feeding at the trough or taking too much money out of the general fund, or that the ordinance should be revisited, that in our competitive arena, we're not even at the table. And remember, please, we're buying media in Los Angeles and San Francisco DMAs, some of the most expensive media markets in the country. And with that, I am open to any additional questions or comments.
Comment by council or the community?
I wanted to try to find a way, and it could just be an email to the chamber, that when other hoteliers or businesses are hosting media that are not coming through the chamber, somehow that information should be transferred over.
Right.
And I'm personally guilty of not transferring that myself, but this is making me think I should do that, because I know that I host about 10 media a year that don't come from the chamber.
Right. Yeah, I'm only accounting for you that which we touch. I'm not accounting for you what happens passively. And often with media relations, it may be directly to the hotel or directly to the attraction, but sometimes they just ask us for a list. I need a hotel and an attraction, and I don't need your help. Just tell me where to go. So.
Okay, I thought that was very. How long did you time him there, Gabby?
I did not time him. No.
How long did it take?
28 minutes.
28 minutes. Okay, that's good. It was a good. Is this report in print form?
It can be printed, yes, and it has been submitted to the city, so you have it.
Okay, the words.
Yes, it's in a PowerPoint. If need be, I can convert it to a PDF, or you probably have that capacity on your own computers to just save it as a PDF.
Okay, I think it'd just be nice for the community if they want to see it, they could come in and look, because I think that was very thorough. Thank you very much. No questions, comments? Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next year.
All right. I think he's getting better. I think it's good, sure. I think it's good. Michael Palmer.
So, good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Mike Palmer, Assistant City Manager. The item before you today is the first reading of an ordinance amending Title V and adding a new chapter for non-transient rental inspection regulations. So, as council may recall, This item has been up for discussion over the better part of approximately a year. The last time staff was here was back in September of 2019. And during that meeting, we were talking about the residential rental inspection program. And I'll use residential rental and non-transient rental kind of interchangeably. They're pretty much the same. But we came up before to talk a little bit through at the last meeting to talk about some proposed changes. We took some feedback in, and really this residential rental inspection program would allow local governments to proactively address some of our substandard housing conditions and move forward with improving resident health by helping to enhance and provide quality housing stock. So we've been here before discussing some of the program parameters, and the last meeting we had been given direction for things to consider. There was also direction by council to go out and speak with both tenants and landlords, and so this is kind of an update to that, and I want to provide a brief summary of what has happened since September. So in early October, staff held 2 different community meetings. They were kind of back to back. We met with the tenants first, and then we met with the landlords. We talked through the proposed program, inspection program, and what we were proposing for the inspection checklist. We gave 2 different versions out. Originally, we had an original proposed inspection program checklist, and then we had one from the city of Santa Cruz, and we kind of worked with both groups to find a hopefully a happy medium in there. We also solicited some feedback from both of those groups, and then those changes are now in this document. Over the several meetings, we engaged approximately 19 different people. There was about 9 at the tenant and about 10 at the landlord. Staff has also met individually with tenants and landlords on several occasions to go through this different iterations of this ordinance before you. So I just wanted to not necessarily read the entire ordinance, but kind of give some general high-level overview of what is in the ordinance. So the first part of it is the ordinance contains a registration requirement. So all property owners, when this, if this should go to pass, we'd have the first reading now, the second reading in December, and then 30 days after that. So this would go, if passed, this would be implemented in by January 3rd. So all property owners would be required to obtain a business license prior to renting the property or the unit. So come January, which kind of coincides with all the other license, they would come in. That fee is approximately $53.50 for a 1 or 2 non-transient rental unit, and it scales up accordingly if you've got a lot more than that. All rental properties would be required to be inspected once every 3 years. Staff would break that out into thirds. So we would have Group A, Group B, Group C. Group A would go in the first year. The following year, we'd do Group B, and then the year after that, we'd do Group C. And then by year 4, we'd go back and re-inspect Group A. There are some exemptions to the program. So the exemptions would include any owner-occupied units. So if the owner was living in one of the properties, we would not inspect that unit, but all the other properties on that land would be subjected to inspection. Also, any dwelling units, particularly those that are like large apartment complexes that are already inspected by the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health, would be exempt. And then we carve out some other exemptions, government-owned units that we're already inspecting as part of our own requirements to meet state and federal law. Houseboats and boats, state hospital, residential dwelling units in hospitals, those kind of things. And the other exception that we carved out as a one-time exemption to this program would be, and this was based off of some of the feedback that we got back from the landlords, is any owner who can show proof within the last 6 months of a homeowner home insurance inspection program that can demonstrate compliance with all applicable state and local laws and regulations related to, things like the building safety, fire, plumbing, electrical, health, and zoning regulations would be given a one-time exemption. So if they can prove that, then they would be in Group A essentially, and then they would be moved out and inspected for the following. If someone gets inspected and everything goes well, then an inspection certification would be issued to that unit, basically saying that all is good, and it would have an expiration date, and then they would be subjected to inspection after the expiration on that. If someone is found to be in violation, if a unit is found to be in violation, there is a minimum amount of time that we would have a requirement for a correction of the violation. So the building inspector would kind of assess the severity of the violation, whether it was an immediate impact to public health or the health of adjoining residents, and they would issue a date for when they would expect what would be reasonably expected to have that violation corrected. The notice for the correction can be extended as long as someone can show proof that they're making progress. So, we wanted to account for delays. We know that sometimes it takes a little bit longer for materials to get here. So let's say they were replacing the door because they didn't have a door, and we know that doors typically on the mainland might have a 6-week lead time. They can apply for an extension, and that wouldn't go against them.
I watch Judge Judy and some of those shows, and they always say you have to show proof that you ordered it on a certain date. So if they, if they're just...
They would have to show proof. That's in here.
Okay,
yeah.
thanks.
They would have to show some, like either a receipt or a shipping date or something that the building inspector can look at and make a finding, and then an extension would be given. We're not trying to make this burdensome. What we're trying to do is make sure that this program meets the stated goal, and that's really to address substandard housing within the city. The other thing that I do want to highlight is there's no cost outside of getting the business license. There's no cost for the initial inspection, and if we have to go back and a notice of violation is given for the first reinspection, there would be no charge. For every reinspection after that, if we go out there, we reinspect, and they still haven't addressed it, then each one of those subsequent reinspections would be approximately $116 for each subsequent inspection beyond that.
Excuse me. I'm hearing rain outside right now. Awesome. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
Nope, that's quite all right. So if anybody is failed to pay any inspection fee when a violation is due, they would incur a $50 penalty on the first day of the month following that due date, and then that would go up by $50 each month. So the first month would be $50, the next month would be $100, the month after that would be $150, all the way up to $500, and they would continue to keep accruing. There's also provisions in the ordinance around tenant harassment, so we wanted to make sure that tenants were aware of their rights. A lot of this mirrors what is already stated in the California State Code, but we wanted to pull it out and explicitly state, that there are protections in here. And again, to reiterate that this program is here to help address a housing issue. We want to make sure that everybody has equal access to quality housing, and I venture to say that 95% of the housing probably meets all of the stuff that we're looking at. It's the 5% that we're really trying to go after and make sure that everybody has equitable access. One of the attachments on here is the non-transient rental inspection checklist, and this has been greatly expanded. When city staff first had brought this before council, the original checklist had approximately 21 sections. What we did was we kind of followed suit with the city of Santa Cruz, and we separated this out. So we've got an exterior checklist on the front, and on the back is an interior checklist, and they're broader. We incorporated a lot of the feedback from council. We also incorporated the feedback that we heard from the tenants and from the landlords. We wanted to make sure that it was easier. Sometimes it's kind of hard to quantify peeling paint. I know there was a suggestion to talk about changing some of the verbiage so that we added a qualifier like no significant peeling paint, but I think we went a little bit in a slightly different direction too, and I'll just give you an example. In terms of infestation, the qualifier there that the inspector would be looking for is the property is clear of all infestations. So we want to make sure that there's that the property is not being overrun by insects and rodents. Another example would be vent screens and crawl space covers. Spaces are properly covered, screens and covers are in good working order. So if they're not in good working order, if they're not there, then they would be found in violation. We're not here to try and nitpick and define small little minor code violations. What we're really trying to do is make sure that there's some basic amenities and the housing stock has some basic stuff in place so that we can slowly improve that 5% that's not in compliance and bring them back up to compliance.
Just on that one, number 2 and number 16 are the same thing.
Number 2 and number 16, that's because one is talking about it in the exterior, the other one is talking about it in the interior.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. We felt it was, we wanted to make sure that when you're talking about the exterior of the house, if they're in the crawl space or you've got a nest of rats living near the property, and you certainly wouldn't want it inside also. So we wanted to be pretty explicit on that.
So something we discussed, and I don't see it in here, and I know you had looked into that. I've got a couple of questions. Is one, I am a tenant, and I'm totally happy where I'm living, and I don't want you entering my home. A tenant.
So if a tenant does not want to enter a home, it basically falls in line with just like fire personnel. What we can do is we can try to make a case. If the tenant still flat out refuses and absolutely doesn't want to, we can actually go through and get a warrant, and we can take that warrant and then probably call the sheriff department, and then we would have the right to enter. Okay. If there was an immediate need, and let's say there's an arcing wire and we knew that there was an imminent danger, then we have the right to enter into the building if there's an imminent need without a warrant.
Right. But on a lesser case, so you walk around my house and you see that so I don't want you to enter my home, but you see that I have plywood on my windows, which is a safety issue. I can understand, but if you walk around my building and it looks fine, and I don't want you to enter my home.
You as a tenant.
Me as a tenant, I think we need something to say, okay, we're not gonna enter your home. And that's onus is on them.
So we did not go that route, because then anybody can just say that they don't want us to enter in, and then there's no point in having the residential rental inspection program. We've decided instead to elect to look at California Code of Civil Procedures. There's 2 different sections in there, and use the warrant. Now we can certainly change that, but I think it would dilute and render essentially this inspection program.
But if I'm a tenant, I don't have a complaint.
Exactly.
Why do I want you to trudge around my house?
I'm sorry?
If I'm a tenant and I don't have any complaints, why do I want you to trudge around my house?
Because what we're trying to do is basically level the playing field and make sure that this program addresses substandard living conditions and unpermitted living conditions. And while you might elect to live there, it's not really staff's job to make the determination on the reasons why. What we want to make sure is that everybody, regardless of whether you're living in that place or not, that everybody has equitable access to safe, affordable housing.
When I vacate, you can examine it.
I'm sorry?
When I vacate and it's up for rent again, then you can come in and inspect it. Why do I want to let you in? I'm living there, it's fine, I don't have any problems.
I mean, that's the direction to staff by council was to look at the residential rental inspection program. We can certainly put that in. I'm just saying from staff and it's staff's opinion that if we put a provision in there, anybody is more than welcome to use that, and then the program's going to be kind of null and void. We won't have any regulatory teeth for it.
The main intent when I brought this up was to feel for those people, those tenants who felt that they couldn't speak to their landlords weren't taking care of business, and that kind of thing. But if I'm a hoarder, and I don't want you to see what I'm hoarding, I guess that's, you know, I mean, I can see if we walk around the building and you see something the inspector sees something that's quite obvious, I would, you know, you see that there's holes in the roof or unsafe on the outside. I don't know, we seem to agree on that a little bit.
I guess
But if you're happy with living in the condition in which you're living in, and you don't want to let us in, why would you care about what's happening on the outside of the building?
Well, you would, because because the inspector would see that. Oh, I see it. So if the rain's coming through the roof and they don't care.
Right. I mean, I think the concern is that a tenant may be quite happy living in a condition that is less than sanitary or safe. And so the purpose of this is to give the city the ability, when there are unsafe conditions, to go in, and if the tenant can just say no. One thing that we could do is we could keep the ordinance as proposed, and then it's a matter of enforcement in terms of, you know, we're going to prioritize how we're going to enforce this, and we could, you know, try to enforce inspect all the ones where the landlord and tenant are fine with that, and then go through another process where the tenant doesn't want it, and if we don't feel that there's a reason to look at it, we could, you know, delay enforcement. But we do want the right to enforce it, because sometimes tenants may just be fine living in conditions that are not safe for them.
Well,
the question, though, that I would have, and maybe Scott, you can answer this, is if the tenant refuses, you know, and it's an enforcement issue, what happens if the landlord refuses to let us, any of the inspectors in, and into any of the rental properties that they have? Where's the difference in right?
Well, it would, in either instance, it's the city's policy. Most cities have that have this have a policy that if the city wants to get in and either the landlord or tenant refuses, that you go get what's called an administrative search warrant, which is a civil search warrant. So we'd be getting.
Can we get those here? Do we have to go to the mainland to get an administrative search warrant?
We would work with the court and do it every other week when Judge Mirage is here.
Okay.
But then I guess I don't see this as much different than insurance inspections. And unfortunately, with all the wildfires in California, you know, a significant number of like hoteliers and business operators are losing their insurance or they're getting dropped from their insurance because of fire hazards. So now in going to new insurance companies, they're required to have inspections in their homes in order to sign the policy. So a tenant, so if I'm a landlord and my insurance company needs to inspect the unit in order to underwrite the coverage, I wouldn't allow my tenant to say no. I guess I just don't see this as being that much different.
Yeah.
And really, we're talking about 5%. I mean, possibly. I mean, a majority of our landlords in town, you know, would pass this. It's more of a, you know, getting through. And maybe some landlords don't even know that some of the things need to be fixed in their units or whatnot. So I guess I just don't see the negative in doing it.
Yeah. Well, there's also the fear of the increased rent. Now you're going to come, we're going to have them do improvements, and then the landlord will increase the rents. And I don't think we have a provision for that, but all I can say to those landlords, that shame on them, because they're getting rents that are using 30 to 60% of somebody's income, and they're not making them comfortable in their home and giving them any quality. I don't know how we can just, and there's nothing in here that says if you have to do $500 worth of improvement, you can't stick it on the person because you have been remiss in what you've been doing for years.
There is some of that language, not quite under the tenant harassment section,
right?
That talks about what they can and what they can't do.
Right.
California State also passed rent protection law earlier this year, so there's a cap on what they're allowed to raise rents on in a given year. So they can't raise it.
But that doesn't include
50%.
That's multiple units. That's not an individual unit. That 8%. If I only own one rental unit, that does not. Those new rent control things don't apply to me. It's a new more than one. It's like 4 or 5 units or something, as I recall reading. But we can look into that. But then the scheduling the visits. I have a question, and this is the nuts and bolts that y'all have to work out. But so I'm John Doe. I own the unit. I come and buy my business license. So that person then is going to have to tell you who's in the unit so we can schedule the appointment with the tenant, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And
there's a couple different ways we can do that. We can either work through the landlord and ask them to talk to their tenants to find out, or we could contact them directly.
Okay. And then to this day, we don't know how many units are out there that aren't getting a business license to rent their property, where people are living in rooms and in closets. How do we get a handle on that? Because that's one of the bigger that's what I say is one of the bigger problems, is the people that are just living in houses that aren't houses.
So I believe we had talked a little bit about this at the last meeting back in September, and there's a couple different databases that we can look at and start cross-referencing to see who is a property owner and who might have a rental property, and we can start with some of those lists and then start sending out letters. It's going to be a little bit of a process. We can also pull property records, see who owns those properties, and what kind of units are on there. So there's different mechanisms by which we can get that information out. And then we can also put out the word too that voluntary registration. So if you have it, please come forward. Please let us know who you have. And there are a small handful of people that already do the right thing, and they already have a business license if they rent properties out.
Yeah. Okay, team.
I don't have any more questions.
Questions from the community? Yes, Leslie. And Bart Glasses in the back.
Rain stopped.
That was it. Came and went.
Leslie
Hi.
Warner, 306 Whitley. Thank you for the opportunity to understand this better. It's my understanding that the second reinspection would cost $116. Is that correct?
Basically the third.
So the first reinspection, no. So if they go in there for the initial inspection, they find a violation, we go back out, we reinspect, nothing. If they didn't correct the original and we have to go back out a second time or any subsequent, then that's correct.
Okay. Thank you very much. And then as I was reading it, based on your 2010 census, it sounded like you estimated you had 1,090 rental units in town, and 300 of those were in the inspected by LA County or other officials. So it brought us down to about 790. So I'm trying to understand how there is no fiscal impact to the city, just in my brain. This is what I'm thinking about. So if you divide it into 3 groups, as Michael said, ABC, then about 265 a year would be inspected. Who's inspecting? Our building inspector?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. The building official, using the LA County code that the city uses for fire inspections, correct?
This checklist is on the back.
I have the checklist, but there's a code that you have to go by as well, right?
Hold on.
Yeah.
So that would be the Avalon Municipal Code, and then any state and federal codes.
Okay, and I believe city also uses the county code for some inspections. So that's a lot of time. I'm just trying to understand how there's no fiscal impact to the city. That's what I'm just focusing on right now. So if you have 265 inspections a year, that's like 5 a week plus the follow-up, blah, blah, blah. So how is there no fiscal impact to the city? Because as I saw, it said none, but aren't you adding hours to the building inspector's day, and then the support staff that writes up the reports, that calls them up, all of that? I would just like to understand that. And also, Annie, I do appreciate your comments about if I'm a tenant and I feel safe and comfortable in my home, why do I have to do this? I think we do need to have a perspective of all people, and if people are not feeling safe, then they do have an avenue, right, to reach out to the city and say, I do want this home inspected. Please contact my landlord, right?
Right.
But
right.
The privacy invasion and just, I question that. So
No,
I appreciate your
it.
comments,
Yeah.
and I thank you for listening.
No, thank you. And if you're going to respond to that? Okay. Okay.
Matt Baker, 323 Upper Descanso. I'm speaking on behalf of myself as a renter. The one thing I just want to make sure we're keeping in mind, if the renter has the ability to ask for not an inspection, that they may feel pressure on their landlord not to request not having an inspection. I think that's why the intent was to make it apply to all rental properties. So if there is an opt-out where the renter can choose to opt out, there is a chance that that renter may feel pressured by their landlord. Not my landlord's great, property's great, but just I think that's one thing to keep in mind.
No, I get that too. That whole, fear of retribution and retaliation and the intimidation, which is dressed in the thing. But the question is, we would need to make sure that all the renters of the world in English and Spanish know what their rights are. So, Lisa Lippel is going to
Just in terms of
yes, Leslie.
the comment about no fiscal impact. I think when we were looking at this, because the building official / public works inspector was hired, this was always one of those things, and they already are doing that with the transient rental. So any CUP that comes up prior to it coming before the planning commission, they're already out there and he's inspecting that. So this was going to be part of this general responsibilities. So it's not that there wasn't any costs, but we weren't looking at any outside costs outside of what we were already anticipating. So if that was miscommunicated.
I guess I appreciated the question coming forward, but I also liken it very similar to the fire department, who inspects every commercial establishment every single year. And they work within the time frame that they can, when they have the downtime and are not on a call. And of course, anything that's scheduled, if they have a call, they would, reschedule it. So I remember this as being part of the decision when we were talking about taking the building inspector from part-time to full-time, and creating that position was in fact to accommodate for this.
Yeah. Well, there was a discussion early on that we hire an outside agency to come in and that there would be a fee, so it didn't impact, but that's when we had a part-time person.
Right, but we talked about that in terms of what a great business opportunity that would have provided for a member of our community to be licensed to do that, and I don't know that anybody requested more information or was interested in doing that.
I know somebody who had been, but we can talk about that.
Okay, well,
but that's okay. And what we're trying to do is not make it a fiscal hardship for anybody to begin with. So that's probably good as well. Okay, and you have someone behind you, Michael Palmer, and thank you for Michael Palmer.
Lisa Lavelle, just wanted to say I appreciate the concerns about privacy and invasion of privacy, but I also appreciate knowing that the house next door to me is safe and won't burn down my house because it's so close.
Yes.
So in the neighborhoods, especially where homes are so close to each other, which is every single neighborhood, I think it's beneficial to everyone in town to know that a house is being inspected on at least every 3 years. And for the rest of the 3 years, you can go about your business. And the rest of the time, we know that the community is safe because there's not a hoarder next door that's going to have their house catch very easily on fire because they're next to mine. And now all that fuel is next to my house too. So
I understand that as well. Yeah,
Thank
Lisa,
you.
thank you.
Thanks.
And I just have another question. Well, Carl's coming up. So the fees are set in at a different time, right? Because the fees aren't in the ordinance.
Fee schedule.
Attached to this?
It's listed
No,
in
and
the-
council's
No,
direction
the
was
fees
to
are-
not charge.
We already did the fees.
They're part of the miscellaneous fee schedule that you've already
We already
adopted.
did that.
So
Okay.
we're not proposing any new fees.
Right, okay, thank you.
Carl Schmeck, Catalina Island Company, 150 Metropole. I just want to say that the Island Company supports the purpose of this amendment, or this ordinance. We're dedicated to providing quality housing for our employees, and I think it's a great, the checklist is great, and we've worked closely with city staff in the past months to make sure that our own housing inspection program, which we've done for many years, is aligned, and so I think we're fully in support of that. I do have one somewhat pedantic kind of nuance of the ordinance, which is section 54080, talks about all applicable codes, all applicable building codes, electrical, zoning. Well, the checklist is perfectly reasonable, and I see nothing adverse there. I do want to just ask that we give that some consideration. The building stock in Avalon dates back some time, and building codes are fluid. There's not that this would necessarily ever become a problem, but given that the municipal code is written the way that it is, I'd ask for some language in there that clarifies that it's the building code applicable at the time. Otherwise, this could get onerous at some point in the future.
Right, and that's because that was the intent, because the building, if my house was built in 1919, and like those plugs you're supposed to put in your kitchen, that they don't work, and GFIs, thank you, but that kind of thing. So
that's not what's on the checklist. I understand that, but
right, but it's not.
I'd ask that the ordinance be updated, and then similarly for zoning, I'm not sure that this was meant to be a zoning enforcement mechanism. It seems contrary to the purpose of the way the ordinance is written. So just somewhat pedantic, but want to make sure that those comments are recorded and hopefully incorporated in future versions.
Do you know where those are? Can you tell where those are?
It's
Legal
the
counsel?
list of, it's that section 540.80.
Page 6 of 9.
Oh, there we go, 6 of 9.
I'm not looking at the right one.
I believe it said all applicable building code, electrical, plumbing, something, zoning.
Yeah.
So what specifically are you?
540.80. That's what I thought he said, but that's not
It's
this one.
0.9?
100, and it's also 0.9, but exactly what was the
Do you mind if I
suggested change?
Can I borrow your copy for a second? Sorry.
I'm
The
not looking at
suggested change, 4080A, scope of inspection. The exact language currently is rental properties to assure compliance with all applicable state and local laws or regulations related to building, fire safety, plumbing, electrical, health, or zoning. I would request zoning be struck. It seems inconsistent with the checklist, and I'd also request that amended to that is applicable at the time of construction or something.
So if a home was built in 1920s with
Knob and tube.
with wiring that is cloth wiring that would not be valid right now, is it your position that that wiring would be fine because it was built with cloth wiring back in the 1920s, and even though it hasn't been allowed in 30 to 40 years, that because it was built that way, it should be fine?
Until they pull a permit to modify it.
I'm just.
Build grandfather.
That's the big hypothetical.
Yeah.
And how would you see that wiring?
Peek in the attic space.
But we're not doing that kind of inspection.
I would say, Mr. Campbell, that if there were a active electrical health risk, that would be covered by the language of this. And that this is simply, and quite frankly, it's more to the point of maybe certain egress codes that would be written differently now than they were written in 1920. So I don't think that would preclude the building inspector from pointing out unsafe electrical conditions simply because the wiring was done 100 years ago.
Right.
If it's unsafe.
Well, again, it's council direction. I just wanted to use that as a hypothetical because my house.
It's a good question.
Cloth wiring in it, and we had to rewire.
And again, I think the checklist is quite reasonable. And
They probably took the knob and tube out of the Atwater when they remodeled the Atwater.
And what Carl's bringing up is something that I thought was actually in here. So the intent was never to, unless there was major renovation or other event that was triggering the need to bring things up to code, that the violations would be, the corrections would be done at the time at which the code applied for when the house was built. So if the house was built in 1908, then the repair would be to repair and restore back to the original code. It was not to bring that back up to code. So if you have a wire dingling from your kitchen and you didn't have GFI, we weren't going to make you go in and put in GFI.
Right. And could you even find knob and tube if you wanted to? To replace with the 1908 knob and tube? So the zoning thing, we don't have a problem with changing that? And then what was how about the other thing he was saying? What would that be? So that the city attorney knows.
I think it would just be adding on that, that under the repairs. Sorry, Carl has my.
54080A.
Under scope of inspection, we would just add applicable to ensure compliance with all applicable state and local laws, and then we could add just a quick sentence in there to say repairs will be completed at the code applicable to when the house was built.
Okay, we'll let the city attorney write the right words. Perfect. That sounds great, though.
$10 a word.
Okay. Never mind. Michael can write them.
Thank you.
And Leslie's behind you. Thank you, Carl.
Just one more question. Would you please help me understand what you're doing with the zoning if you're crossing it out? Why was it there and why are you taking it out? I don't understand that. Thank you.
Because when we go to inspect somebody's house, they're not going to be looking at how it's zoned or was it zoned wrong or has the zoning changed. We don't care about the zoning of it. Help me out there.
It was because there are certain standards that are applicable in different zones. Okay. That may have changed over the years in terms of space and stuff like that. And so that what they're doing is now we're going to say that if it was zoned properly at the time it was built, it's fine. So we're just taking zoning out because zoning is a separate thing. Because
we're not looking at zoning at all.
You're not looking at zoning at all.
Right.
But the intent was what may have been okay in terms of setback when it was built, may not be now, and so we would. It
also might have been a bootleg unit then.
Right.
And you can't.
But we're taking that out now.
But we're not even looking at it at all because we're looking at the checklist.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So
everywhere that zoning is.
So we'll take just for the correction. So the ordinance would be amended to strike zoning, and because it was at the end of a long list that said and zoning, we're going to take and zoning, strike it out, and move that and to the preceding section, right. And then we're going to add in the sections where it talks about the codes, the various codes. There's a couple locations, so we're going to add the words that would be applicable at the time that the building was built.
Great. Okay, and any other comments? Okay. First of all, Michael and everyone, and Amanda, who are all involved, thank you for getting us to this point. I know it's been tedious. I appreciate those people, tenants and landlords, that came to those meetings to participate. But I think we have a pretty good document here. So I would like, because I never do this, to introduce and make a motion to introduce and waive all further readings of the ordinance amending Title 5 of the Avalon Municipal City Code and adding Chapter 40, titled Non-Transient Rental Inspection Regulations, with the two changes mentioned. Is there a second?
Second.
It's moved in second. Further comments? Call for the vote.
All ayes.
Great. Okay. Item number 7.
So item number 7 is to report back to the City Council on the progress that the Planning Commission has made in discussing revisions to our how we permit and manage transient rental properties. I gave you a staff report that outlines all the different things that they've talked about at a lot of different meetings. We've talked about this a lot. And what we're hoping this evening is to get from council is perhaps just a little bit of direction. The consensus so far is that we are going to move forward with changing the permitting process on new transient rentals to a type of license, and it would no longer be a land use entitlement.
Yes.
So it wouldn't travel with the land. So the Planning Commission was pretty much on board with that. After a lot of discussion, we saw a lot of problems with trying to sunset or amortize or change the current properties to the new license and to take away their land use entitlement. City attorney made a pretty firm case that could be subject to some pretty severe challenges, and so we felt like it would be more prudent to just go forward with a new license as new permits come in.
Great. So you're saying that if I've had a license for 30 years and I sell my property, I'll be able to sell that because I've already got it?
Because if you currently have it, it will remain as it is as a land use entitlement. Unless the council wants us something different. But
then the argument there would be you could amortize it, and you could say that you could keep it for another 5 to 10 years so you get your reasonable return on investment, but after that, then it expires. One of the options we had talked about was if we wanted to do the amortization or sunsetting, that perhaps a little bit of the carrot with the stick would be that the existing ones would automatically convert to the new license. So the current owner can continue with the use, and it would only be the next person that wouldn't. Yeah, the options were it's a certain number of years, let's say 5 to 10, or it remains, you don't have to get your annual, because it's going to be an annual permit. You just you keep your CUP until you sell the property changes hands, and at that point then that person has to come in and get a license. So both of those items we could do. There's some risk there that someone could say that you're taking away my property right.
So
because I have something now that runs with the land and you're taking that away.
Okay, so you have 2 people that have owned their homes for 30 years. You've owned one for 30 years with a CUP. I've owned one for 30 years with a CUP. And I really haven't been renting mine, but you've been renting yours for 30 years. So
that'd be a separate thing. Yours would be revoked because of lack of use.
okay, I've rented it a little bit. I've given the city $12.
Okay.
You know, well, first of all, I think, other than Councilman Hafes wasn't here at the time, but I believed we all felt strongly that change the land use entitlement to a license.
And that will going forward,
yes.
The new ones will be. And I think what has been a difficult thing that the commission has had to kind of wrap their head around, and you kind of touched on it, Mayor, is that when you have a land use entitlement, you can't really judge the impact of that entitlement depending on Joe rents his 10 times a year and Jim rents his 4 times a year. It's a land use entitlement. They can rent it 365 days a year if they want to.
Right.
So we really need to try to treat these as if they're all renting all the time. And then decide how we mitigate it and how we manage it.
Well, okay, so if in fact when you bought a piece of property at the CUP and all the real estate people agree that increases the value of the property, if I have been renting it for 30 years and renting it 365 days a year, I sure as hell have gotten my extra $50,000 for the purchase of that property.
I would not disagree with you.
So
that's where our attorney would have to help us decide what amortization schedule would be the most defensible, and that's why we thought that if they automatically convert to the new license at the end of the amortization, then the case for the fact that we're taking something away would be a lot tougher to prove, because we're not taking it away, we're just changing it after a certain time.
If I could, so one of the things the council did was it said, look at these things, including the amortization. And so the Planning Commission looked at that, and we discussed various ways that could be done. You know, whether it's changes when you sell the property, a certain number of years. And in those discussions, the Planning Commission thought that at this time, the best way to do this was to just make this prospective and not do this amortization thing. If that's the council's direction, that now that you've got the Planning Commission's thoughts, if you still want to do amortization or somehow have it end, we can go ahead and do that, but their thoughts were, given the risk and which way to do it, and some people thought, gosh, I've got it running with land, I should have it because it's a land use thing, just as a matter of right, it shouldn't be changed. There was not a consensus of the Planning Commission to go forward and do anything looking backwards.
Well, I personally would like you to be able to look at the pros and cons of amortization.
That's what I was just going to ask is, I don't think that needs to go back to the Planning Commission, but I would like to get a legal perspective on the impacts of an amortization. And I guess the way that I sort of feel about it is, you know, maybe a time period, 5-10 years, or the life of the current owner. I wouldn't want to, if you had just bought in a house and we say, now you're going to amortize it over 10 years, that person just bought this house.
You mean through the life of the ownership?
Yeah, I'm saying I would like to look at or understand that a little bit better.
We can provide that. I can provide that memo that we did to the council.
I mean, other cities have not done this. There's no other cities that in this situation?
Oh, some cities have done the amortizations, and most cities have not.
Okay, so that's so good. There's been a little precedent there. And so the options to amortization, I think. Okay, just changing and I'm sorry, gentlemen, I'm talking a lot, but just to change permits from a land use entitlement to a license, on the new ones, can we start with that and get that implemented quickly?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Okay.
And what the discussion there is we will take it out of the zoning code and put it into the license code, but we're still going to require. It's not going to be an administrative permit. It's going to be a permit that you're still going to have to go through a planning commission license hearing, where we're still going to give notice to the residents. We're still going to have the same standards for it. It's just going to be, and the public is going to have an opportunity to come and say yes or no. But then once you get it, it's only going to exist for as long as you own the property.
Okay. And the other question with that, and it actually has to be used.
Yes, well.
And how do we establish that?
I'm sorry, go ahead. We didn't reach a consensus on how to set a minimum requirement, on whether a minimum rental period or minimum rental amount. There wasn't a consensus reached on how to establish whether or not the permit's being used, what the minimum would be.
Okay. So this license would be, okay, the licenses be what it, but to go to the hearing, they're still going to have to pay the $3,200, correct?
No, the discussion was that the fee would not be anything like what it is now. Because the current fee includes the public notice fee, the conditional use permit fee, CEQA, and plus we're also requiring a coastal development permit. So that's why that fee is so high. It would not, I don't think we'd be able to justify that level fee on the new license process.
We would come up with what the actual, we would come up with a fee based on the actual cost of the license, which would still include the public hearing process, because we're still going to require people to give notice and stuff like that. Still going to require a staff cost, and we can look at it to see if the Coastal Commission agrees with us that we don't need to get a coastal permit anymore.
So we were passing that money on to the Coastal Commission when we
No, there's separate notice requirements when it's a local coastal permit that add to the cost of processing.
Okay.
Right.
And so we're going to put it there. The issue that we could not get consensus on is right now is you have to use it at least once a year. And if you don't use it once a year, then you are subject to a revocation. So then the discussion was, should there be another number? You have to at least use it 5 times or 10 times. And if you don't do it then you lose your license. And it would be automatic because it wouldn't be a land use entitlement, but there was no consensus reached on the number of times you had to use it to keep it.
The license has no value. It's not transferable.
Right, bingo. The thought was that people pay these little small amounts in order to hang on to that land use entitlement because they see value in being able to pass it on to the next person. Right. Who's going to go to the trouble to get a license and not use it because it's not something they can pass on? I think the theory was that on the new license, if people go to the trouble to come in and get that new license, it's because they're intending to rent their property and pay us our 12%.
Okay, I got it. I figured, yeah. Except on the number of times or however you do it. So I can just rent it 5 times for $10 a night and the city gets 12% of $50?
Currently, yes.
I think that needs to change.
Now that is a different question.
Whether
Whether we want to impose
but when we're going to change the limit for a license, we need to have something, and with that license, thou shalt.
But I think the question, Mayor, is do we want to impose a minimum on the current transient rentals? And I don't know if that was another question for Mr. Campbell. Can we change the rules now that we've granted the permit? Can we suddenly decide they have to rent it a minimum number of times a year for the existing permits?
Not for the existing ones unless you want to do, again, an amortization. And again, that was the thought of there was no looking back. Looking forward, we can say you have to, use it a certain minimum time to generate, some fees for the city. Then, the other thought is then the other counter thought, which has been in the Planning Commission, is if we require people to use it a certain number of nights a year, then what we're doing is we are reducing the ability of people to rent it out for long periods of time because we are requiring people to use it periodically to keep their license. In other words, would long-term housing be impacted by forcing people to rent it out on a transient basis for a minimum number of times?
Well, no. You're either going to rent it to somebody on a year-round basis, unless I'm missing you, or you're going to rent it out for a few times because you want to be able to come back and enjoy your home.
Correct.
So I think you can't compare the two.
Well, but again, if you're that would be the case if you have the incentive to keep it active, or you lose it because your property is going to go up. Yeah. If you just want to, you could lease it to year-round people, and then you could, at the same time when they're on vacation, you could lease it out for 1 or 2 days, like a Airbnb, which people do. So anyway,
but that's only impacting the old ones. That it's not impacting the new ones because of the license.
Yes, except there was no consensus. Again, we're just reporting what the Planning Commission's discussion was. There was no consensus on requiring a certain number of days for either the permit or the CUP.
Okay.
It sounds like the Planning Commission has done a lot of work with this, and it sounds like they have some sort of consensus on what they want to see. So I know there's a couple of planning commissioners here. If you don't mind getting up, and if that is the case, I would really like to go with what planning commission's recommendations are. They're more involved with, the information, and so if a couple of them like to get up and see if they are in agreement with what they put in front of us, I'd be more inclined just to go with what the recommendations are.
I think you said they weren't in agreement, though.
Well,
right?
it was,
They weren't?
yeah, I mean, there was, and we've had planning commissions.
Not a lot of agreement.
Again, we've had planning commissions also change. And so what I want to make certain is if the planning commissioners do talk, address the council, do not discuss among yourselves. And just direct the council. Because we don't want to have, because we haven't noticed this is a planning commission meeting.
And we could have a joint, we had a joint one once before, it was a lot of fun.
So-
Oh, I know, and I'm sure they were going to speak.
Okay.
Do you want me to finish talking about the couple other issues, or you want me to go ahead and let the planning commissioners speak?
Well, again, these are things that they reviewed and discussed, and I guess I'm curious to know what, if any of these they agreed on.
The main thing that we had difficulty reaching a consensus on was a saturation criteria. Whether we wanted to set a cap on those citywide, a cap per streets, if we wanted it to make it a percentage. That was the one that we seemed to have the most difficulty with.
Okay.
So otherwise, if we're going to look at amortization, we'll bring that back. We've got a consensus about the license, and then I'll let the planning commissioners come.
And just the saturation, part of the issue with the saturation was, do you want to do it via street? Do you want to set a certain numbers? And so one of the things that the planning commission was waiting for was data in terms of how we have sent out a number of letters to people that have CUPs that haven't used them in a year to see if they will voluntarily give them up. And if they haven't, then there's a certain code enforcement we could go through to eliminate those CUPs. And so there was the desire of the planning commission to get a report back as to how these letters went out and how many people are actually using it before they reached a conclusion on saturation. But there's great division on saturation.
And I see that was supposed to happen in August 2019.
And we are giving them a current update tomorrow night on where we are on the letters, and I'll share that with you now, if I may.
Sure.
We sent out 65 letters. We've received 47 responses. 28 have come back and paid. They're lacking TOT for a little more than $23,000. We have 11 properties that have confirmed that they had banked their CUP and they were renting it year-round. We have 8 that have voluntarily terminated their CUP. Of the 18 that had not responded, we found out that 10 of those properties had sold, and so we've reached out to the new owners, and 2 of those new owners have come in and paid their TOT. So we're actually only down to about 8 that we haven't received any response from at all.
That's great.
So, okay.
That's really great.
That is great. Okay, someday we need to talk about the banked ones too then, right?
Yeah, it's great. They're banking them, renting them year-round, so, okay.
If they're banking it, and they're renting them year-round?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
and then the purpose where it was there was to encourage people, if you had this, if you're going to rent them year-round, you're providing year-round housing,
Right.
and that's a good thing.
Right. But then when they sell, but then when they sell the property, here we go again.
Right.
Okay.
So, this has been really arduous, and I want to say thank you to Amanda and Rocio. They have done so much to get that kind of information together. I don't know if you have them in your information about how they've shown saturation on the maps and what an updated version, and it's really revealing, and it's that they've done a lot of hard work. So I missed 2 meetings because of my surgery, and so Bart may be a better person to say some of this, but I think that this idea of making it a license and not a land use entitlement we see that, and I don't know what happened to the discussion. I may be wrong because I missed a couple. Is that I thought we even talked about making this license be much less costly, however, be yearly, so that the city has a better way to monitor complaints
days, things that have been rental, payment of TOTs, things like that. So I'm not sure if that's still on the table, but that was another way to say that kind of keep a little better control on if people are maintaining the property. I mean, we've only talked about yearly rentals, but
it would be an annual license fee. You
right.
come in,
Okay.
just
okay.
Like a business license fee, it'd be an annual license.
We had said that, but so the cost would be considerably less, but it would give the city a better grip on what's happening as far as and then now we're really coping with the saturation issue, and I don't think I really want to say about it because I missed the 2 meetings, and when I heard what the latest I like it, the metamorphosis of what we had kind of reached. I like it, but I think Bart would probably be able to speak to that a little better. But anyway, I think we did get some movement, and we finally got somewhere. It wasn't easy, that's for sure.
No, I know. I appreciate you.
But
okay,
I
thank
think
you.
we got some.
Come on, Bart.
Bart Glass. We beat this thing to death. You've had us beat it to death many times. Many councils come back and do the same thing. In the last 15 years, the static number of CUPs in this town has stayed about the same. So we're redesigning the entire wheel all again to see if there's going to be a different outcome. But the number of CUPs in this town has stayed the same. So we looked at this new licensing thing as the complaint always was that it ran with the land. So the licensing thing kind of adjusted and fixed that. As far as going back to all the people with the other licenses, you are going to have fights on your hands. I can guarantee it will happen. And why bother? You're not solving anything by doing it. But when you come down to like, there's got to be a minimum number of days you rent your house or something like that. You get a CUP for $3,200, which is no bargain, to pay you 12% of everything I rent my property for. Okay? Otherwise, if I rent it out by the month or a 30-day lease at a time, the city makes absolutely nothing. So I think the Planning Commission has gone round and round and round with this. We've thought we've had it settled several times. You guys have kicked it back down to us. We've tried to come up with what we think would be the fairest thing. And going forward, we think really the licensing thing would be the fairest thing. You'd still have a public hearing. The fact that it wouldn't cost you probably $3,200 to come pay you 12% of everything someone makes on their property. And we have things in place now to take care of CUPs that are a problem. We have always had it. If you complain about them, you get a couple complaints, it comes before the Planning Commission, and we can revoke your CUP. So we've tried to look at everything that you guys have asked us to. The consensus we've come to is exactly what Amanda has gone over tonight, and Paula as well. The saturation thing, there's some neighborhoods with none. There are some with them. If you buy a house in the flats, the price alone is going to tell you you're probably going to have more people do a vacation rental in a lower priced home than you may in a higher priced home. But in general, you'll find that the inventory of CUPs that are out there right now are well taken care of properties. They're not junk. You wouldn't rent them out. Right. You wouldn't have any business. So
no, you have a couple more.
You know, so my thing is, I think if we go forward with what we've proposed, we don't start a cat fight amongst a whole other group of people that we've been, like I said, I've been through these things several times, and I've been in the town for 34 years listening to it. You can beat a dead horse only so many times. If we start something new, I think it may solve a lot of the problems. They're not going to transfer, and you'll still collect 12%. It is 55% of your budget is what CUPs and that tax goes for. 55% of your budget. Over half of your budget is ran by that. And when you start saying, we can't do any more of this or can't do any more of that, you can't grow at all. I know the chamber would need the number of rooms that are out there, you know, just for events and stuff that are in CUPs. But again, the number's not changing. When we discuss it, it starts to change. If you say you can't have any more cars, everyone wants to run out and bring a new car. The same thing will happen with CUPs.
I guess my question is a lot more simple than that. I know the Planning Commission is a very diverse group, and you guys have worked hard on what's come before us. And I'm just saying, is there, in your opinion and Paula's, are have you guys worked on this and come to like the majority of everything? You're in agreement that this is a good document, or is there still a big disparity? Because it sounds like you've worked together and you guys have come together. And if that's the case,
on one
you
thing.
know, I want to be supportive of that, of your work.
Not on everything.
Okay.
Bart and I rarely agree on much of anything.
Time of day.
But,
Okay.
but I think it was direction you gave us, and we looked at the CUPs, and we looked, and with the information that we got on different reports from Amanda, most cities have turned away from CUPs just because of the land use entitlement issue. So I think if you look at we're not the only ones struggling with this. So when you look at this statewide, it's huge. He's in a very different world than I'm in, so it's, I don't think we're ever going to agree on the business aspect of it, but I think we have come to on this issue of land use entitlement, that it may not be the best interest of the city or the people.
So right now, the only thing they agree on with is land use entitlement to a license. That's it.
Yes.
Well, I think we're getting somewhere.
That's generally true. I
No.
think we
Okay, how about?
No.
Okay.
And I think that what they came up on if you want to hear where I think it is now, I mean, why don't you speak to that? Well, I wasn't there when this was talked about, but from the updates I've gotten, that it's sort of thinking
Closer
about.
to the mic, yeah. Okay, well, we'll let Bart, okay, so Bart, how are you on, you're on determining saturation?
We've looked at the saturation, so there's already a saturation map in place, and we haven't changed any of it, the saturation part of it.
So nobody has a problem with saturation?
Oh no, I have a terrible problem with it. This is where we like, anyway. But the thing about it is that like some streets are at 76% are transient rentals and only 24% are year-round rentals. That's eucalyptus. Okay, so that's pretty rough. And for me, I see it's a discrepancy, and it goes against what the general plan prescribes for the town as quality of neighborhood and quality of life. But for what I heard as a resolve that was talked about while I was not at meetings, was talking about something as we do with the vehicles. Am I incorrect? With this is that, for every two that go out, one can come in. I don't know, that was one of the things I heard. But I'm for percentage by block, by a neighborhood, or a block or something. That's what I see, because I'm not really sure how that, but I didn't hear what the conversation was with the two out, one in.
There was a discussion generally about looking at the number. We could set a maximum number of CUPs or licenses citywide. And then the issue was, what's that number and how is that going to be administered? In other words, are we going to say that a certain street can only have 50% of the homes on that street with the CUPs? And so if you're beneath the overall number, but that street has too many, that street doesn't get any until the number gradually comes down. But there was no final determination on that because the Planning Commission wanted information on the effort by Amanda and Rocio to find out how many there actually are, how many people are going to give them up. And I think what we've had is now, if 8 have given them up, that's probably roughly how much we've granted this year. So we're again in that stagnant area.
Okay.
I can't say the process hasn't been constructive, because I think the commission was asking for better data, and we got better data, and that has been really helpful. So it's hard to make decisions when you don't really, I don't think we'll ever have it completely, because we still don't know, so I think that's a good place to start. We have much more information than we have.
Well, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, Bart, but what I was kind of expecting, and I guess I just didn't really read it, was like, if you review the methodology for determining saturations, what were those different methodologies? Or pros and cons of establishing criteria for, did you actually throw out a whole bunch of those, and are those somewhere? And Amanda's right behind you.
Go ahead.
No.
I'm sorry. So currently, saturation, we only look at the immediate adjacent properties. And we don't look
Right.
at how many there are necessary on
Right.
the whole street. So the concern is that, like Paula said, there's some streets that already have a high percentage,
Right.
and there's some streets that have a low percentage. Currently, probably less than 2% of our housing units in Avalon are transient rentals, when you look at the total number of housing
Oh, you're
units.
talking apartments and all that, yeah.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
So the question is, do we want to set a percentage, what we think is acceptable? Maybe we make it 10% or 15%. And then, like Scott described, if any street is already above that percentage, then that street would not be allowed to apply for any more transient permits for that street until there were some that came off the list.
Right.
But then you have to reach a consensus on what is that number. And that's
Well,
what we can't really, do
Well,
we
I mean,
administer
I
it
think
in
the
that
fact
fashion, or?
Yeah, see, to me, the fact that you debated all that, and you could look at from one extreme to the other, even when you don't agree, you know, then that's when we'd say, you've given us all this information, and then we have to make the tough decision. You know, we just wanted you to do all the research and give all the pros and cons. Tell us what all those are, and then we have to make a tough decision.
Well, and I will say to you, I mean, because we all sat in a meeting together, the commission and the council, and you gave us those 3 directives.
Right.
And so.
You might need to be closer to the mic. I'm sorry, Paula.
When we open this up, I mean, you know, here, we're 3 newbies with Janie, our alternate, and we had very different viewpoints from the council, and the commission was quite discouraged because they said, we've done all this before. Then we send it to the council, and it just doesn't go anywhere. So they were kind of discouraged. So it was hard, because I understood their frustration with, we've been through this, we've beat this dead horse. And so, you know, that we got somewhere, you know, I hope it goes somewhere, just because I do think that the impact on certain neighborhoods, when you look at the maps as they are, with the little red dots of what houses are transient rentals in certain neighborhoods, there's nothing left of the neighborhood. They're just transient rentals. And to me, it's eucalyptus makes me like, oh, really? And so I have a hard time, and I think because the flats represents, for the most part, I can't say that in entirety, but some of our more affordable housing is that it really impacts rentals, and that, you know, affordable housing, huge impact on the city, and so anyway, that's what. So we've gone round and round.
Can I just make a clarification, because it's really bothering me? This council has not, and so what I want to say it publicly, because you've said it in an email to me and Bart has said it tonight, that this current planning commission has not kicked anything up to this council or even pre-Steve in the time that I've been sitting in the council seat. So when we had that meeting and we gave information to go out and do this, if the planning commission and its members, who I don't think any of the planning commissioners currently seated were planning commissioners when I was one, right before I came up to council. So it's a whole new planning commission. It's a whole new set of persons looking at things from a different perspective, as well as this council is a different council that's looking for a different perspective. So if all of this was beat a dead horse all these times before, where is that data? Bring that data to the council to say, these 5 times over the last 20 years, this is what the Planning Commission has debated, and the current Planning Commission doesn't feel that any of those changes should be made.
Well, I would say it seems to be an issue for you, that you think this is something that we find, it's what came to us when we started discussing this. Mm-hmm. So I guess we could go back and see who was on the commission or on the council when all this thing came, but I don't think it would really serve any purpose but to say, but I will say, I know nothing has come to this council from us, from this commission. Right. But in the past, and I couldn't say, because I wasn't on the commission either, if things that were recommended to the council did not come to fruition, it was not this council. Okay, so let's let that go.
But it's important because coming from a planning commissioner, one of the things in my tenure as a planning commissioner is we developed the saturation maps. Amanda started that when I was a planning commissioner just prior to council. And so what's interesting to me now is we as a planning commission, when I was there, did not talk about the saturation until a moment that we created that. And so now I'm interested to see what is the saturation in town and what does the current commission think about the saturation, and how is the current planning commission receiving data from the city. So if somebody brings a CUP to the planning commission now, if nobody opposes it, there's nothing that really is out there that says you don't have any basis to approve or disapprove.
There is one.
I was just going to say, the way it goes, and is because there's 3 of us that think one way about saturation and 4 of us that think another way about saturation. If it's in the flats and I see that the saturation level on a street as we see it now is approaching 50% or above, I vote no. And I have voted no on several, because that's where I think it starts to impact the neighborhood. It affects the quality of life in that. So we do vote no, but the saturation issue is we're tackling it now. And I know Amanda could provide the saturation maps that we have now that will tell you exactly by street what percentage, as we know now, are transient rentals.
Okay, but to answer Cindy's comment, you do have something that you go by, Amanda, if there's, explain that on the sides and all that.
So like I said, the saturation criteria is you look at how this application is going to impact the immediate homes around it that are occupied year-round. And you don't look at the whole street.
Right.
And the code says that it's not a make or break deal. The code says you're to consider saturation in your decision. So if it's oversaturated, the commission can still, if it exceeds the current saturation criteria, the commission can still choose to approve it if there are some mitigating circumstances. It's not a make or break.
Okay, but wasn't there something about surrounded on all sides, or you?
That's what I'm talking about. So let's say,
but there wasn't a number, like it's on 3 sides or 4 sides.
You can't. It's a phrase we use. You can't close the box.
Okay.
You can't completely surround a year-round occupied property with transient rentals, and that includes property across the street, property across the alley. But again, it's not a make or break. It's something to be considered. The commission has to decide.
Okay, great.
So I think what would be helpful is if there was some guidance or direction on whether or not the idea that we can determine by some amount that these areas may be oversaturated, and so we want to spread the gravy a little bit.
Right. Well, and again, that would be great, and you don't all have to come, the commission doesn't have to all come up with agreement. That would be where we take it. And when we appointed all the most recent last year or 2 members to the Planning Commission, and I said to all of them, I want you to work for us, and because we don't have the time to spend hours, we have all the other stuff, and they're just doing planning stuff. So to give us that information and do that homework, and I appreciate those of you who have really taken that to heart and are doing that work, because once you bring up all the possible options and what you're thinking, and then we can go from there.
So what we can do is, if we can take the data that we have right now, which are maps, and we've tried to the extent possible, we've tried to also, for each home that is a CUP, if we have data, how many nights a year is occupied by someone, because that gives you the, how bad it is. Like if you're surrounded by red, but it's only 1 night a year, and each one of those homes, So we have some of that data from finance. So we can bring that data to the council, and we can talk about some of the options that we've discussed in terms of percentage of streets, percentage of zones, general percentage of flats versus hills, and we can bring those options and that data to the council.
Why wouldn't you send that back to the planning commission since they don't have that data? And let them use that to consider.
No, they have the data now.
It's just, we're working, I mean, that's the part
Wait,
we're
hold,
working on now.
okay, you can't talk from your seat, Paula.
I'm sorry?
And Lisa's behind you.
I know, and I want her to say something because she's going to say one thing I was going to say. That saturation, the box thing.
In the
saturation.
You've been here enough to know you need to walk up to
I know,
the mic.
but usually my voice is pretty. The box thing about the before and after, the person that wrote that code, it's up to interpretation. I mean, you can literally make it a box, but you don't have to. I mean, saturation is also you can interpret it.
Right.
And so we are in the process of looking at. We want to get it out of being a land use entitlement. I think everybody on the council, the commission, really agrees with that. So if we can do it step by step, then to go towards now, how do we work on saturation? And that's the big discussion now. And so I mean, I think all the things that Scott brought up, that do we do it? Is it an overall count? Is it by neighborhood? Is it by block? Is it by zone? How do we do that? And that's a really touchy and it's also a contentious issue for us.
Right. Well then,
but we're going to do it
because you just talked about 5 options there.
Right.
We want to know what those 5 options there are, and it would be nice to know when you do your little count to say, well, this was kind of a 2 and 5. This was kind of a 3 and 4.
Okay.
This was a 1 and 6.
So you don't want us to reach a final conclusion. You just want us to tell you what we've entertained.
Well, it doesn't
as far
sound
as
like
the
you
decision.
can, other than the license. That's the only thing you seem to be in agreement on.
Well, no.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
we could try. I mean, we could try, but it might be tough. So yeah, if that's what you want, we can get there.
Because I don't want you to kick it forever. For example, you say review the enforcement mechanism needed for the findings by host compliance regarding non-compliant TRPs. I guess you've discussed that, but haven't come up with an answer to that. I mean,
wait, you read it so fast, I can't.
Well, review the enforcement mechanism needed for the findings of host compliance regarding non-compliant TRPs. Now, have you actually discussed that, and was there a consensus
Absolutely.
on that?
Yeah.
And a consensus?
Yes, and that's the letter.
Mm-hmm. That's, I mean.
And that's the letter.
Going back and forth, actually,
Okay.
now it's the tracking, hunting them down.
Okay.
weeding
So
them
we don't
out.
need to review, because that's already done. You say to review and discuss the following. Well, that's already done, so we don't need to review and discuss that one.
Guess you don't, I guess.
So, I mean, based on what we have in front of us here.
Mm-hmm. I think for us now, just the last and final point of issue on this one topic,
right?
CUPs,
Okay.
is the saturation.
Yeah, and us talking about amortization. Okay, and Lisa?
I was just going to reiterate what Paula said, which we know about saturation is that it was never a strict number. It was a guideline. When I was on Planning Commission for a term and a half, we determined that 75%, because some neighborhoods were already close to that or even over that, was a reasonable number to assume or look at. That's a lot. If you look at Descanso, which is where a large number of people on in this room live, there's a lot of empty homes most of the time. It's not a neighborhood like it used to be, and I grew up on Descanso, so I can speak from experience. There used to be a lot of families on that street, and now we have a handful of retirees, a couple of families, and mostly people who come for holidays and things like that. They're not necessarily renting their home as a vacation rental, so we're not as noisy on Lower Descanso as Upper Descanso can be some nights of the week. But my hesitation in saying that you should do it in a general block area is it's challenging because Hamilton is perfectly okay with having vacation rentals. The homeowners association has said so. The owners who live there have said so. They're okay with that. Mm-hmm. I don't know that that was the original intent of Hamilton Cove, was to be fully vacation rental when they started, But every neighborhood is different, and the challenge is that it's going to be challenging to try to determine what that saturation point is when the neighborhood changes. The neighborhood right now might be okay with it, and later they won't be, or vice versa. So I'm not, this is just good luck with that one. And then to Scott's concern about amortization with regards to people who currently have a CUP, and knowing that as much as Kelly Nelson tried to tell us that it doesn't have any effect on how much money they can get for the house they're selling, sure, it does. And my question would be that if you were, and I think this may be possibly more liberal than I would want it to be, but if you were to allow the current owners that have CUPs to then sell them one last time, so it goes to that owner as the owner and then stops with that owner and becomes licensed after that, does that cure the issue because they're aware of the fact that they're getting it with the property now, but will then not be able to sell it? There's no amortization necessarily because they won't be able to say, hey, I thought I could sell it. I thought it was going to be part of the package. Would that help solve the problem?
Well, no, how does that solve it? Because then, okay, so I sell, I've had mine for 30 years. I'm able
And you
to
assume
sell
when
that.
you're going to sell that you could
Okay.
sell it, so you have it with you to sell.
And how long does that new owner get it?
I don't know. But the homeowner would be told when they buy it, you have this for the length of your life of the ownership, but you do not have it to sell to someone else.
I think her issue is that as applicable to anyone who currently has a CUP.
Correct.
You get one sell.
Right.
So that no one's hurting you.
Correct.
In this scheme, because you're able to sell your property and get some value.
Right.
The person that purchased it doesn't have,
fully aware.
They can go ahead and they can use their property for CUPs as long as they own it. But if they ever decide to sell it,
it goes to the license.
It goes away.
And how about
it
passing
becomes
it
a
on to their
license.
children?
Right. I'm just offering a suggestion.
Well, I mean, again,
It's an idea.
Good suggestion.
Because then at least the person who owns it now, part of the issue that we had, because we never thought about licensing before, was that we were worried that it would cause issues of suit because people would say, I bought in knowing I had this much value and now I'm losing it. Great, you bought in knowing you have this much value, you're not losing it, and the person who's buying it from you has full knowledge of what is included and what is not included. And when they go to sell it, they can sell it and offer it as a licensable location that has previously been approved for that use.
We have not
it's an
seen
idea.
that in any city, but that's something that I could get behind.
I mean, I hear that. That doesn't make me real comfortable.
The last
but-
thing, and I apologize for going over, but the last thing I'll say is that we talked about this round and round. Just because you don't grant a CUP doesn't mean someone's not using it illegally to sell. So the challenge of trying to limit CUPs doesn't necessarily, unfortunately, I wish we had more year-round housing that was affordable for everyone to live here all the time. I need good staff. I need people to stay.
Yes.
And I don't have that right now very often. I have very few people that stay year-round all the time. And most of them have roommates they don't like or parents they have to live with.
Yes.
So the ability to have that is, unfortunately to me, a wholly separate issue. Closing out CUPs doesn't mean that you're going to gain all of this housing year-round all of a sudden. It just means that you're not making the money off the CUP and you're not having the vacation rental. So
I hear that.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with you.
thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
I know it's not an easy topic for you guys or the Planning Commission, but I appreciate it.
No.
But I thought that is a very valuable suggestion because they were saying, the Planning Commission is saying that, they're recommending we don't take away the current, what would be grandfathered land use entitlements, but this way, if you're saying we did say we wanted to look at the land use entitlement, not having it transfer, this is one way to kind of mitigate both of those with that suggestion of you can sell it one time with your property because you currently have it, but it doesn't transfer further than that. And I guess then I also want to just go back to the question, and Amanda, I was going to pose it to you, so it's perfect that you're up. Could we just go back to the moment of conversation about 2 CUPs go before, or 2 licenses go before another one comes in?
I think the idea behind that was if we were going to set a cap, like we did with vehicles, we're not going to allow more than 250
Goodbye,
CUPs.
gentlemen.
And if we wanted to gradually reduce the number of CUPs, then you would only issue one new one if two had come off. So I think that mechanism would be if we wanted to reduce the number of CUPs and not, or if you had a situation we described where one street is way oversaturated, we wouldn't allow new ones on that street.
Okay.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Kind of? Okay.
Yeah. Lisa, did you want to say something else?
No, I was supposed to go meet some chamber people.
Oh, okay. Okay. So we kind of talked about going forward, what we need to do and what we'd like the planning commission to do. Give us all your pros and cons and and anything, and how close you are to agreement.
Okay, so let me confirm what I think I'm hearing from you. Is we're going to come back with perhaps our 3 best ideas on what to do with saturation.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
We're going to also give you the information about saturation that we currently have.
The data, good.
We're going to bring back what we think we're going to do with the license for new ones, and we're going to bring back the pros and cons of some type of amortization sunsetting.
Yes.
Do you want me to start on the license right away?
The license right away, because we're all in agreement with that.
Okay.
And
We
you
can
are
do
too,
that.
right, Steve?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And the Lisa Lavelle option's not bad.
Okay.
I like that.
Oh, I don't like that, but.
You don't like them being, you don't like homeowners that currently have them to be able to sell at one time?
Well, no, because that next person could own it for 50 years. So, I mean, I just feel like somebody's had a CUP for 30 or 50 years, they have gotten their money out of that program.
I
have totally gotten their money out of the program.
We did have one idea
Yes.
that might be a substitute for that, is I have a CUP, I'm selling the property. We would automatically grant the buyer the new license. So they would automatically get the new license, which bridges the gap between the guy who owns it and who wants to make sure his buyer has that same right to rent, but the new buyer's right to rent would only be the new license.
Oh, that's a...
The buyer would buy it knowing, yes, I can rent it, but the buyer also buys it knowing he's not getting something that he can sell.
Well, but then we still don't, okay, so that would hopefully alleviate the problem when they sold it, of that it's worth that extra value.
Right.
Well, write that one down, that's a good one too.
It's in here somewhere.
I like that.
Okay, so CUP, automatic to license to new buyer, okay. Yeah, we had talked about that, okay.
Okay.
All right, so we'll come back. Thank you very, very much for taking the time.
Thank you very, very much, and thanks to the Planning Commission. Jenny, are you all leaving us, or are you on top?
Even though it's been talked over and over through every planning commission, through every city council, it is still the hot button issue. When I walk downtown and there's any mention of housing or being on the planning commission, every, I would say, voter, because you guys are going to go through an election pretty soon, is going to be listening to this.
Mm-hmm.
And the general consensus of the man on the street, random, it might be anecdotal, is stop with the CUPs. Slow them down. That let's just see what happens, that it's not helping our housing, and there's a lot of different statistics that say it doesn't matter, but that's just, I think, the common citizen's take on it. And that maybe you ought to go with that at some point, because it's really hard with saturation when there's nobody left to say, hey, wait, I don't want a CUP next to me. I mean, there's literally streets where there's nobody left and that was one of the items on the code that you have to take into consideration what the neighbors have to say. But they're all CUPs, so there's no neighbors.
I see what you're saying, yes. Okay, thank you, Janie. Okay, so we're good on that one.
Yep.
Now we have Michael Palmer up for our last item on the agenda.
Yeah, Mike Palmer, Assistant City Manager. This item number 8, is for consideration on an agreement with RSG for fiscal year 2019-2020 relocation consulting services. So back in mid-2018, City Council actually approved the renovation of a low-mod building. This building is located at 206 East Whitley Avenue, and it currently has one tenant on there. Construction plans were finalized back in July of 2019, and the renovations are now scheduled to begin in early 2020, so probably somewhere around January or February. However, prior to us being able to go forward with construction on the renovations, the current tenant who lives there would need to be replaced. So in order to comply with California tenant relocation law, the city is required to provide relocation benefits. And this is a stipulation because that building was purchased with low-mod housing funds, so that there's some additional requirements on there. Tenant relocation, the process, while it involves a lot of legal compliance requirements, doesn't necessarily necessitate an attorney or the city attorney's office for most of that. We are looking to, there's essentially 2 proposals, and I'm going to talk about one and then an alternative one that I just received also. So tenant relocation assistance, because it is highly complex, it's legal, and we want to make sure that we protect public entities such as the city of Avalon from any unnecessary risk and liability. And we also want to make sure that the city's interests are protected as well as tenant interests are protected. Staff's recommending that a third-party consultant be used to help guide us through this process. In that vein, the city reached out to RSG Inc., who has over 40 years of experience in providing relocation and asset management. They're also serving and have served as in a consulting capacity for the Avalon Successor Agency. And they're very familiar with housing law. They're kind of an expert. They're utilized in a lot of different communities and cities across the state. We asked for a proposal from RSG for these relocation consulting services relating to the 206 East Whitley Avenue project. The scope of services as originally proposed would include putting together a relocation package that included interviewing the current tenant, meeting with them to identify and assess their needs, providing relocation assistance to help minimize any hardships, develop a relocation plan, and prepare all required relocation information and notices, and then also prepare any files, disbursement of payments, and required paperwork. Since then, the original proposal here was for a time and material basis budget that would be billed on an hourly billing rate with an estimated not to exceed budget of $12,745. Staff did reach out to RSG for an alternate, and we consulted with the city attorneys just to find out, really legally what are we required. We can negotiate directly with the tenant. However, we would still recommend using RSG as a consultant, and there's a reason for that. One of them is to make sure that whatever agreement, settlement amount, that they were able to run the numbers and make sure that we were in compliance with relocation tenant law, and make sure that whatever offer was made was defensible and was not a gift of public funds, essentially. The other part of that is we would still need to utilize the services of the city attorney's office in order to draft up any agreement, to make sure that all of their rights were either met, or if there are any rights that the current tenant wished to waive as part of this, that was put into the agreement, and then it would protect both the tenant and the city from any future potential litigation. So we wanted to make sure there. That proposal, that alternate proposal, should the city council wish to reduce the scope, would be for a not to exceed amount for $5,945. It'd still be billed on a time and materials basis, so that cost could potentially be lower. And I do apologize because that alternate scope was not included in here. I just got that about 2 minutes before city council meeting started, so I do apologize for that. So essentially we have two different proposals on here. Both of them are to utilize the services of RSG. Again, and just to reiterate, the first one would be to go kind of all out, use RSG exclusively for a not to exceed amount of just under $13,000. The second one is to reduce the scope and utilize RSG really to help provide interpretation of legal tenant law, and also to help develop a relocation benefit package that city staff would negotiate directly with the current tenant.
For what amount on that one again?
$59.45. Well, to me that sounds great. So then you probably should provide us with that $59.45. Which of these tasks go away?
So essentially their scope would basically come down to two. It would be to provide advisory services to answer any questions that staff would have, to review any documentation, and to provide relocation estimates to justify the amount paid to the tenant.
There are certain numerical requirements that require a mathematician and stuff like that to look at their income, the state guidelines, and then you come up with a number as to what you think that relocation package would be. Staff would then negotiate with the tenant on that, and assuming there was an agreement, then they would just turn it over to us, and Elizabeth Hull would do an agreement, and we've done many of these before, so it's more like Mad Libs for us, filling in blanks.
Yeah, okay, and then who's going to do the new unit inspection? Just our building official?
It would all depend on what the two parties came to an agreement on. So there's some of those could be waived. We would go, if that was part of the package that was negotiated, then that would be our building official, John Gilbert.
Questions or comments, council?
Go ahead. I was going to say, initially I wasn't okay with the $12,700, but after you explained it, that the protection and the amount of money we possibly could lose with redevelopment money, I understood it. But now that we've gotten it down to that other amount, I'm for the protection that we'll get. I'm before that.
Is that a motion?
For what?
I make a motion to approve the $5,900 not to exceed.
Second.
The alternate too.
You wanted to.
Yeah. Well, I guess. Well, first of all, when did we purchase this property?
It was in 2008. Escrow closed, I believe, in June, and notices went out sometime in July.
And how many tenants did we have? Was the whole building full of tenants when we purchased the property?
No, in looking at records.
I'm sorry, Amanda, how many? 3 tenants?
Yeah. 3. I was going to say, looking at records, it's 3 out of the 4 units were occupied.
3 out of 5.
3 out
and
of 5,
so the city of Avalon is now required to provide some sort of compensation for moving the tenants because we want to remodel the property.
We would be displacing, because of the renovations, we would be displacing the tenant. So the relocation assistance comes in. Anytime you do renovations, construction, if you sell the building, all of that would be subject to California statutes.
And would that be for anybody who, I guess where I'm kind of going with this is that
the only way we wouldn't have is if the renovations or construction did not displace them, or if the city had a lease agreement in there and we had any clause in there that waived tenant relocation benefits. But because of the funds that we utilized in order to purchase the building, and they already had existing tenants, and we did not move forward with putting anybody on a lease or having anybody waive relocation benefits, we're kind of...
I'm sorry, could I just have you, we do not have leases.
They're on a month-to-month, so if you're not on a lease agreement, it's assumed in California that you're on a month-to-month contract.
At the time that the property was purchased and transferred to the other entity, okay, back in 2008,
Okay.
there was not a lease entered into with that tenant where they either waived the relocation benefits or it was dealt within the lease, and so.
Or checked her income to see if she was low income or not.
Right, and so once that process was complete and escrow had closed, then that tenant is there without that lease. And so since then, it's been a month to month because
There was an establishment of something, the nonprofit housing development board or something, wasn't there, Amanda, through that? When we purchased East Whitley, there's some housing development board, a nonprofit thing. Wasn't there some board that was?
Was that the community, the Avalon Community Improvement Agency?
No. And they were
Okay.
supposed to establish things, and I don't know whatever happened with that board.
Okay.
And it wasn't council as the board, it was outside people, wasn't it, Amanda?
So was
That's all I
this,
can-
was BB&K on board when we purchased this property, or was that pre you
no,
guys?
we were on board a year and a half later.
Okay.
We can still blame them, though.
Well, no, but I mean, I think it's valuable for the community to know that partially the reason that we don't have this is because we didn't do, part of the reason that this is coming before us is because we didn't do leases at the time that we purchased the property.
But you still would have had to pay relocation.
No.
Agreement or
Unless we had
No.
put people
Unless
on,
we
yeah,
had-
we could have done,
we said
so,
no.
so I think
Yeah.
what Councilmember Cassidy is saying is,
I see.
had the city gone through and done income verification checks and then put everybody on a lease, and in that lease, we could have written in a clause to waive relocation benefits.
Right.
Or we could have provided relocation benefits for those that qualified under the low mod, and then anybody who's living in there and who chose to continue to stay living in there who did not qualify, then we could have put in additional clauses on there.
And then I know the one gentleman passed away, unfortunately, so I know, but the other tenant that moved out, did we provide any relocation for the other tenant?
No.
Okay.
So when we sold Ida Court, was there relocation paid to those folks?
Yeah.
Yes, wasn't there?
And we had to pay it? And that was a lot of units. That was quite a few, yeah. And because there were leases on our property then, we had leases and with them? No, they weren't even our people. And we,
Because
so,
you
and we
purchased
had to
the
provide,
property.
what's that?
Because, yes.
Yeah,
we
so
paid
we,
relocation.
even with those, Cindy, when we sold the property, we had to pay relocation for those folks.
Okay.
So, and they weren't necessarily low income. Okay, well, I think,
Okay, well, I'm
We're good.
okay with the
Sure,
amount
questions?
to negotiate, and I guess that sort of, I know we've talked many times recently about this and with the city manager also, so I appreciate all the extra effort that you went through to bring that number down from the original 15,000, and I do understand the legal requirements, so
Right.
we need to just make sure that we dot all the i's and cross the
if
t's.
there was a motion and a second, do we
Okay,
vote
wait,
on
I
that
just wanted to
already?
make sure it's clear, though, that, yes, you're authorizing the $5,945 in addition to attorney time that's going to draw up the contract. There will be extra money.
Only going to be an hour there.
Yeah, we hear that all the time.
Because they've done it before.
They've done it before.
I think it'll be 2 hours.
Boilerplate.
And I think
Okay.
that's fine, I mean,
I just want to make sure it's clear that there's
Yeah.
money's being spent.
I mean, our legal fees are significantly lower in this year than they have been in years past already, aren't they?
Yeah, this is the lowest they've been in 8 years.
The
Okay,
lowest,
but then the
yeah.
question is, okay, so then you try to you negotiate, and then you come to us.
Yeah, we would enter into negotiations. Once we had a proposal, we would finalize and bring that back for approval.
Okay, and well, I don't want to talk about it right now. Okay, we'll see what happens. Okay, thank you, Michael.
Yep.
Okay, well,
Wait. So we had a first Who was the second?
We didn't vote.
Who was the second?
Councilmember
Thank you.
Olson.
Okay.
And a vote, please.
And call for the vote. Hi, Mike Craig.
All
What are
ayes.
you doing here?
He's been here all night long.
I know, but I just said hello.
No calls.
Oh, no, he did. Okay, call for the vote and it.
We did.
Okay, now we're going into closed session.
Yeah, we have one closed session item, conference with legal counsel, significant threat of litigation that concerns a letter from Planning Director Amanda Cook.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
My letter says that my letter contains 2 requests. One was to have the city manager review records that the previous city manager never considered when they imposed discipline. My second request is that for 2 years I have been giving a city staff member the cold shoulder because that's what I was told to do by David Jenkins. David Jenkins told me not to talk to this person, not to interact with them, or have anything to do with them. And that's what I've done the last 2 years. It has made a horrible working relationship for me. It's been uncomfortable. And I'm fully cognizant that everybody at City Hall feels this difference in how I treat this person. I feel like I'm continuing to be punished for something that I did not do. That the records have existed all along that prove that I did not do what I was accused of doing. And I am still being punished for it by having to treat this person differently. And I am tired of it. I did not do what I was accused of doing. I gave you the proof 3 years ago, and you refused to look at it. So I'm not clear why my 2 requests to the city manager about internal personnel issues are having to go in front of the city council. The city council, I believe, has dabbled in my employment more than once. They dabbled in it with Den Harvey. They dabbled in it in this secret decision about the cough study that got passed along first to Mrs. Ratty and then to Mr. Jenkins. And then they tried to reduce me in step. And then they withheld $22,000 in retro pay from me, supposedly at the direction of council members. BB&K said it never happened. David Jenkins had memos and emails that said it did. And so I'm tired of being punished for something that I did not do, and so I want you to explain to me why my requests to the city manager have to go into closed session. I fully understand why the building permit issue fees that weren't paid need to go in there, but I don't understand why my 2 requests to the city manager have to be discussed in closed session. And I'd like an explanation, please.
The discussion in closed session is regarding the reiterated request for 2 months of back pay.
I'm sorry, reiterating request what?
2 weeks, 2 weeks, I'm sorry, 2 weeks. In your letter, there's a request that the council reconsider the discipline and reinstate the 2 weeks of back pay. Council has to do that, not the city manager.
That would be correct. Thank you for the explanation. It would have been nice if this letter had said that. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Okay, we're going to say good night, Tony.
Good night, Tony.
Wait a minute.
Oh, yes.
Are you going to come back and tell me whether or not I still need to give this person the cold shoulder?
Well, I don't
directed by
understand.
David Jenkins.
You're saying that
David Jenkins told me not to
How
interact
long's
with
he
this
been
person.
gone?
Nobody else ever told me any different. They said, in order to protect myself and the city from further litigation, because they were hired in the middle of all the museum drama, he told me not to interact with them. So it'd be nice if somebody said, no, you don't need to do that anymore.
Well, who would?
That's a city manager issue between.
Yeah, that's what.
I understand.
If you can just tell me that somebody will answer that question, I would be grateful. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Because we never heard that. All right, and we are back from closed session. Legal counsel?
No reportable action.
Thank you very much. Good night, Tony.
Good night, Tony.
Meeting adjourned.